Right now. There we go. Rock and roll.
Let's do it.
Welcome, everybody. It's episode 6 of America Heals. And this is a podcast that has begun out of the need for us to move forward as a country, and certainly from the center. And for those who are tired of Trumpism and fanaticism and fascism and all the things that have aired their laundry over the past few weeks and months, this podcast is a conversation that's just simply trying to put some order and some purpose in our debate. We've got comments on the side. We're very excited to see everybody coming in from YouTube. And hey, Steven, how you doing, man? Good to have you. And we're going to go ahead and introduce. We've got Jeff with us. This is literally the first every time zone on the continent here we've got represented today. So Jeff, you're coming in from the Midwest.
Yep, coming in hot from the center.
How you doing, man?
Good, real good. We've had 5 earthquakes in one day, 24 hours. We've had 5 earthquakes, which in Kansas is very strange, but that's the current event from my part of the world.
What's the
might need to talk about that a little bit here.
Yeah, it's a very strange situation. I don't. No one's really sure. I don't think there's been fracking in Kansas for like 5 years, so we're not really sure what's going on.
Wow. And then Ace, we got Ace out in the east side over there.
Hey, Georgia.
Over Georgia.
It's weather is good, like always in Georgia. That's
wonderful.
That's what we bring. We just bring good weather.
Oh, tell me about the weather. What is it?
It's cold, but it's beautiful outside. Just gorgeous. I posted some pictures. It's just a really pretty day. It's great. You know, we got a Senate runoff coming, and that's it. We're gonna hopefully make everybody proud, but probably unlikely.
And we've been getting into the Georgia piece. One question I want to ask on that. It sounds like they're registering so many voters, or have registered so many new voters. That's exciting.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams did a really great job. I wish some of the new messaging was different, but
yeah,
we're gonna do it live. We'll see how it works. We'll see how it works.
Yep, totally. And from the West Coast, live, coming at us hot, is Zach. Welcome, Zach. How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Why do you want to be on this crazy bunch? This is such a cool thing to be able to share, but I just kind of want to know where you're coming from tonight, because you're a new face and coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, so I've noticed that progressivism and the message that progressives are giving has come up a lot on this channel, but there hasn't really been a progressive to defend that point of view. And cool. I also want to be able to respectfully push back on some of the centrist ideas that are being put forth.
Awesome. And I think we're ready for that. I think we're all being, and just to be fair about it, I expect that this is going to be the theme of the next couple of years for conversations like this. And part of the reason that we've held off a little bit on that, just as this is our 6th episode, and we've sort of held off a little bit on that, is to allow us to recognize we got to get Trump out of office. And so being united is still critical. There will be lots of time for us to find our way in the left side. But I think tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go down that road a little bit, and because we have to. We've got a cabinet that's coming into place. We need some commentary on that. It's going to affect discussions. I think I put in the title that we'll be speaking about the Green New Deal tonight. That's a general direction of progressive conversation. So I don't know if we'll get only into that particular thing. I'm going to let you guys take us down that road. Any other stuff as we kick off tonight from the panel, from the crew?
I would have to say, if we're going to be talking about left and centrist, we got to talk about Medicare for all.
Amen.
That's the cream of the pie. That's the message. That's the big difference.
Okay. We'll get there.
I also want to point out that us having this conversation is also a really big signal of Trump is gone and we can start moving past him. So yeah. I think it's a really good point.
Cool.
Absolutely.
And thank you for recognizing the need for that too, because I think everybody's had to just chew on their fingernails for about how many weeks it's been, waiting for this temper tantrum to fizzle out. And that sort of segues us into the first round tonight of what I wanted to talk about, and that is literally watching people like Mitt Romney, and I hear now Susan Collins is beginning to fold her position on following Trump, as we see Michael Flynn calling for Trump to utilize martial law and redo the election in the swing states. Lunacy seems to be taking over the land. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about it from your perspective, because I'll talk all night.
I have a poll if you want to put up. We were talking about the fraud of the president. This poll, if everyone can read it, is Joe Biden the legitimate winner of the 2020 election? It's 62-38, but ironically, Biden voters 100% agree, while Trump voters only 18% agree. So we do have a pretty significant problem there, in that a large number of people.
We still have a minority.
That's a very huge swing. I mean, that's pretty polarized.
Hey, Jeff, bring it up a little bigger, will you?
One more?
Yeah, a couple more. There we go.
I'm about to hit the edge of my frame here. How's
That's
that?
fine. That's fine.
It's still a majority, because if you do the math, that's still, because 100% of Democrats, that's 82 million people. And then 18%, that's of 70. That's a huge amount of people that fully agree. So you're down. They do have a chunk, but it's not going to have enough power. So there's always crazy people. Mm-hmm. There are people. I mean, you're going to have people, like I talked about in last scope. There are people that don't mind. They don't mind dictators. They don't mind kings. They don't mind this kind of stuff. It's not out of the realm. It's not 100% of the United States is not only for democracy. There's a section of people that don't mind it, because they just don't. So a 38%, it's not of 100% of the voters. It's not that bad.
No. I did find it surprising it was 82% Trump voters, though, or do not. At least this was December 8th and 10th, I think they said. 8th through 11th is when they did this poll.
This is a really telling poll, because this is straight up just legitimacy. If you look at this number, this is like post-election number, that total number where Biden wins the election, the popular vote on November 3rd by whatever it is, 52%, or he gets the 52. He covers over the 52. Here we've got 62-38 is a final score. It looks like to me, in the psychological legitimacy of this country, normally it's going to be more like 85% to 15, and that's a sickness we have to deal with. But then the other number that blows me up is, look at yes on the Trump side. 18% believe that Joe Biden is the president. And I got to say, that's a big number in this Trump world, because they've been able to hold that line to damn near 100%.
90%. That's his thing, is holding close to 90% on everything.
True.
So when we're hearing McConnell and we're hearing Romney and now maybe Collins and whoever knows who else might grow a third of a spine, that's a bigger number, and that's that split right there, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's like doubling his doubters from the under 10% to 18%. But I still was just surprised. I mean, we're literally talking about legitimate winner. We're not talking about who'd you vote for. Yeah, because this would be what I would expect maybe for who you voted for. In this case, it's just, do you think he's legitimate? The fact that 82% of Trump voters think he's not legitimate. I mean, if that's not sore losing, I don't know what is. I mean, if you had asked me a month and a half after Hillary lost, if I thought Trump was a legitimate winner, I would have said yes.
But have we
I wasn't happy about it. I would have acknowledged it.
I don't remember seeing these type of polls. I'm sure there are. I wonder what the Democrats felt like when Hillary Clinton lost, because they could have been a pretty big number too. I mean, Hillary on every single poll was supposed to be a blowout. I mean, it wasn't a surprise. It was Donald Trump. So I wonder what that poll, could this just be that it's so fresh and people are just not admitting to something? It's just a fresh thing. And then a couple of months when Biden is in, people are going to be like, let's move on. I mean, is this going to
I think that's what it is. Already, I think that 18%, a lot of those people are ones who probably initially supported Trump. And as time has gone on, they're going to start getting quieter. I don't think we're going to hear too many people openly admit I was wrong, but I think a lot of Trump supporters are going to just stop talking, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know how we'd find that graph from after Hillary. Again, this was done December 9th through 11th. So, I mean, we're talking about a month and a few days after the election. I have a hard time believing Democrats would have, or Hillary voters would have only been 1882. I have to think it would have been at least 50-50, if not 40-60 for, for Trump. I mean, the question is he a legitimate win or not? Are you happy? It's not a satisfaction question.
Hey, everybody, I'm glad you're here. Everybody's piling in. It's good to see the friend crew coming in. And if
Absolutely.
you guys can like and share this thing, man, we're trying to grow this thing. I have to say this before we get rid of this with this article. And this is a piece of analysis to the Republicans that they may not have thought about. They should. And I'm going to give it to them for free. If Trump decides to declare martial law and tries to steal the election with the military, which seems to be something that some of them have a consistent, hope for, that 18 and 22 number, that 62 and 38 number is how many people are going to be opposed to a sitting president. There is no way to legitimize the steal of an election that the Republicans are trying to threaten and cajole and blow up. And so just look at that number. That's 18% to 82. That's a complete flip. Inside that little world, they don't have to flip anybody, but 100% of Biden voters, 62% of the American people are going to be like, this is bullshit.
And that 62 is a big, big number because 100% of ours is 82 million people.
Yep.
100% of theirs is what is it, 7 million less?
Right.
So that's 7 more million people. That's all. 62% is a huge number.
Yep. And how would you, by declaring martial law and by
how do you run an election under martial law? Like, how would that even make even a particle of sense?
Well, he's not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when Flynn said that, I was just like, I don't see how that's possible. And that's the other thing I've asked some of my other friends is, even if you said, you know what, let's just pretend all the theories are true and Atlanta was totally destroyed by fraud. Let's just make that up. Georgia was totally destroyed by fraud. As I said a couple of weeks ago, what do? You can't. You don't just give those to the other. You don't just say, well, they fraudulently tried to pull it for Biden, so we're going to give them all to Trump. It's not a coin toss situation. In my mind, the worst case scenario would be you'd split the Electoral College and just say we're going to be a push, so it's going to be 50-50. In other words, even if you found a huge preponderance of fraud, the odds that you'd be able to back it all out and redo the election without actually casting votes, to me, is extremely small. And then when you get into recasting votes, I mean, how could you got? I would argue now that the election's where it is, it's a whole different dynamic. Even if you just tried to have everyone go back to the polls, that's a whole different dynamic now that the whole race has been run everywhere else. Like, I don't think that you can do that fairly. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Michael Flynn's as crazy as the day I first heard him talk. So,
and if they win.
I think one of the problems, though, is you're trying to apply a rational solution to irrational questions, right? Like, these are all these proposed ways for Trump to steal election. They're all irrational. So trying to rationalize them in any way is just not going to make sense.
Right. Good point.
What the fuck am I doing? Sorry for swearing. Tech really takes me to that other place, I got to tell you.
And if they all went back and voted, they would still use the same Dominion machine. So it's not like you can vote using a different machine.
Right.
And
how fired up would people be to vote again for that, to get that knucklehead out? I mean, this thing, I don't know, man. It would be. They just. All right. Well, so what else on this Trump treason stuff, man? I mean, there's so much of it that's coming at us every day. Sidney Powell and a special counsel. Is that going to happen?
No, I don't know. I think a special counsel has to be passed, right? Don't you have to vote on that? Who's going to vote? Even the Republicans are not going to vote for it.
It's my understanding the only tool left is that the legislature, they can find objections or something, but they have to pass both houses. So obviously any objections Democrats create aren't going to pass the Senate, and any objections the senators create aren't going to pass the House. So I think it's all just show at this point.
Is he going to get a ray gun and sit in the White House and be, like Scarface? I'm serious. Is this going to happen?
You mean like is he physically not going to leave?
Yeah. Is he gonna nuke Chicago? What's he gonna do next to try to get our attention?
Have a rally. He's gonna have a huge rally on Inauguration Day. And he's going to do it because Biden has already said he doesn't want a big rally. It's going to be super social distance. I don't know what they're going to do, like trucks or I don't know. So the best thing for Trump to do is have a rally at the same time in a different place, and it's his way of basically middle finger it up. He wouldn't leave because he knows that's going to end really poorly for him.
Sorry for covering your faces, guys. I just want to drop that up there. Has anyone seen this magnitude ever witnessed in history? Thanks, guys. I know. I got to figure out how to do this. Here we go.
It wasn't quite that high last time. Or somehow there was it was 5 of us, so we were keystoned a bit. We were off the bottom line.
We were. The 4, it's like all full screen. It's awesome.
Yeah. I think in terms of a historical perspective, it's never been like this before. Trump is taking it to a new level, but we have survived rocky transitions before. If we look at what happened with Hoover to FDR, that was a pretty rocky transition. It wasn't Hoover did accept the results though, so there is that big difference.
Yeah, my Pooanon buddy sent me some example from the past where there was some electors were cast out, and so there was some disagreement about how the election was resolved, and it seemed to have been resolved in some sort of administrative way. But there was some situation where there was vast corruption or something, where they had a whole state they couldn't put their fingers on what the vote actually was or something. Not in this modern scenario where every Secretary of State has certified the results. This would be a situation where North Carolina produced 3 results or something, and they had to sort of administratively figure it out. At least that's my impression. So I don't think it's ever been this crazy with such a clear voting system, such an airtight voting system.
Yeah. Zach, do you want to say anything about the voting system in California? Have you studied or any of your views on that? Because we've had some pretty good conversations around the voting systems. Just bringing that up.
So I've actually been a poll worker for California. I didn't do it for the general election out of fear of COVID because I live with some older people. But during the primaries, I did do work as a poll worker. So I have somewhat decent understanding of how it all works. And
you trust it?
Yeah, 100%. It would be really hard one, you can't hack it, right? In California, and I'm sure in every other state, it's not connected to the internet. So I think people need to understand when you're voting on a machine, you're not actually voting online. So people need to understand that layer of protection. Now in California, what they do is it's not even stored in any type of cartridge. Essentially what you do is you go up to the desk, you do all your registration, show that you are a California citizen, that you're a US citizen, and then we basically give you a card, right? It's almost like a hotel key kind of card. And what you do is we pre-program it for you specifically. You go up to the electronic machine, punch it in, and then you just pick each thing that you want. You can review it before you submit, and then out comes your printed ballot. So nothing is being stored anywhere. And the electric form is really just you printing out your ballot so you don't have to fill in circles.
So there's checks upon checks.
And then
right.
You scan that piece of paper? Do you scan that piece of paper back in?
No. So once that paper's been taken out, it's essentially the same as if you have written on it, right? So it gets put into the ballot with all the other papers, and then it gets sent off to the actual counter. So I wasn't part of the counting of the ballots. That's a special job where you need to be certified for that.
The way they feed in automatically, I assume that they go into one big cartridge, the kind of box where once you pull it out of the machine, you can't open it. And they just take this big cartridge of ballots from each voting place and take them downtown to be counted.
Right. And there's something called it's like 2-step verification. And part of it is you can't have one person alone with the ballots at any point in time.
Right.
So you can actually get fined or put in jail if you're just found to be alone with the ballots. You always have to be with another person. So because I was the young man of the group, because most of the people were older, they stuck me outside to do the drive-by ballots, which are essentially the same. What you would do with the drive-by ballot is California mailed out all its ballots. So you write your ballot in, you go to the location, and you drop it off. And so security there, you have at least 2 people watching the ballots and making sure people drop it off. So that I ended up spending a few hours at a time out in the cold, just making sure that there was no fraud going on. And at the end of the night, you had to have multiple people load in these big bins full of the outdoor ballots, because you could not have one person alone in the truck. You had to have multiple people at every step of the way.
Right. And if it doesn't happen or something is getting squirrely, you get in trouble.
Right. Yeah. You can go to jail. So
part of the myth about this, election hinges on the ignorance of folks, and that's not a mean word. That's just a word that means they don't know what they don't know. But folks don't know all these details about the system, because it's, to be honest, when people start talking about voting, and I'm a political science guy from way back, it makes me a little tired, because it's kind of boring to talk about. But if you're understanding how it works, it's actually very integral and very interconnected and all of those things. Yeah. There's a couple other things. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
And just to finish that, and every state, because we don't have the same election system, and every state has their own rules and regulations. So Georgia's are very close to Zach's, but we have an extra step on top of Zach's, which is the paper comes out. You take that paper, you put that paper into another scanner, and it scans it as well. So basically, your vote is kept in 2 different places, so it can get cross-checked. So like, it's impossible to rig a Georgia election, because there's a vote here and a vote here, so you can cross-check them at every single time. So yeah, but you need to know those rules. And the same thing like with the signature that Trump pushes on signature verifications. That's just a false fact. They check all the signatures on the envelopes before they take the ballots out. The trick is, once they take the ballot out and they check the signature, this envelope goes away. It doesn't stay with the ballot. That would make it stupid. So then they scan it through a system. Now your vote is tabulated. There is no more signature than it. So what Lindsey Graham was asking is, well, do you have the envelope for this ballot? At which point they would say, no, we don't need it. Then toss the votes. That's all he was saying.
Right.
And another point to that, in California, you have to have 2 people there. So one person looks and sees that the name, and then they check off and say, okay, this person's voted. Then they take away the name from the ballot, because it's 2 different sheets. Then they give the sheet that has the information of what the person wanted to a separate individual. So that individual who's doing the counting has no clue whose ballot that is. So
yeah, so Ace, the only way you could do a signature check, in my mind, because we do the same thing in Kansas, exact process you described, the only thing they could possibly do, in my mind, is take all these empty envelopes, scrutinize the signatures, and then say, okay, we did a study of 1,000 ballots, and we found 30 of them had bad signatures. So we find that could be potentially this many votes that have bad signatures. So if you threw out all those votes and they were all 60% for Biden, then that would bring Trump to the lead. So we need to whatever that, what the rectification is. I really don't know how you would ever fix that. And of course, the challenge is, if your signature doesn't match, we all know, signatures sometimes just don't match. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're in a hurry. Sometimes you ride off the edge of something that's underneath it. I mean, signatures can be botchy for a bunch of reasons. So
high IQ.
I've got a screen you could share real quick. This
okay,
is
cool.
Good place to feed it in. Now, I apologize. This is a poll. And now, of course, you could probably have raw data. But this is saying preferred vote method. Again, I'll try and find a raw data one maybe for next week. But as I've been saying, if you look, it's almost exactly inverted between Republican and Democrats, in person and mail-in. So 55% of Republicans were going to vote in person on Election Day, and 50% of Democrats are going to mail in. So you've literally got 2 very desperate pools of information. So as of Election Day, when we started filling out the states, by my math, that's 50% of Democrats had voted and 85% of Republicans had voted, at least had their counts their votes counted. So that's why you saw such a swing, is half of the Democrats hadn't even been tabulated, depending on the state. And that's why you see what freaks people out, those middle of the night bumps where they were heavily Democrat. Well, you know, this is a little over 3-1 Democrats to Republicans voting by mail. And so that's why you get a pool of, you know, 10,000 votes in the middle of the night, 7,000 of which are for Biden. Well, that's because they had stacked up all these mail-in ballots. They've been running live ballots all day. Some states wouldn't even allow them to start counting them till the next day. So then the first thing they did in the morning or the middle of the night, 4 a.m., when they flipped the machines back on, is they ran these big batches of mail-in ballots that were heavily Democratic. So you have two separate populations merging in the data, and that's how you get, in my opinion, those big blips where suddenly, you know, at 6 a.m. there were 100,000 votes and they were 80,000 for Biden. Well, that's because it wasn't just another 10,000 regular votes; it was a big batch of mail-in votes.
Yeah.
You know, I think another thing people need to realize about mail-in votes is, let's say that the system messed up and I somehow received 20 mail-in votes. I could sign in, do all 20 of those votes in my name, put whoever I wanted 20 times, mail it all in. But only the first one is going to count. All 19 after are not going to count, and it's going to get flagged as saying this guy is trying to commit voter fraud. So the idea that like having multiple votes sent to you is going to equal having multiple votes cast in your way is not true. And there's not even significant evidence showing that people were getting multiple mail-in votes sent to them.
And if you did want to create 100,000 false mail-in ballots, you'd have to find 100,000 registered voters who didn't vote.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty complex task if you stop and think about it.
Yeah.
So know all of their signatures perfectly.
Early in the week of election week, and in all of the swing states, there were representatives of the Republican Party who were asked to come on. Tom Ridge, for instance, in Pennsylvania, came on the morning of the election, and he was on a couple different networks. And Tom Ridge is one of the great original sort of post 9/11 fascists. He was the guy who helped us, develop the Homeland Security. He was the guy that gave us the Patriot Act and really drove it home and moved all of those sort of huge governmental overreach, sort of intelligence overreach into the citizens, and brought all that in. And he was actually the person on the Tuesday, the morning of the election, who came out to say, this is a narrative that's going to not work for us. And he said, the Democrats' votes are in, and we're not going to know who the winner of Pennsylvania is until Thursday. He said at that time, it ended up being Saturday because of all the conflict. But he said, he goes, there's absolutely no way that Pennsylvania will be able to call it tonight. And all of us, from every perspective, went home and said, I hope we win, and I hope it is tonight. Fact is, he was right. And they were trying, even Republican ops were trying to do the right thing, to say there are bales, I'm going to use my own word, bales of Biden ballots that are in, and there are all these Trump voters are going to hit today, and the Biden stuff is going to get counted on Thursday. When you go to bed tonight, Trump's going to believe that he won. Now, of course, if we go back even further into history in October, September, August, you'll see state legislators all over these states were having opportunity after opportunity to count these early votes, and they stopped them. The Republicans stopped them because they needed this drama. They needed this made up, dramatic curve to explode into shock that they lost. The fact is, Donald Trump never got above 45% popularity. He went into the election pushing maybe 47% of the whole coalition of the right. And Joe Biden broke the damn 50% mark, which is incredible in the polarities of our system, where 49-47 is a lot more easily attainable. But we didn't have a Green Party this time, or we didn't have a heavy libertarian to draw folks. I know Kanye was supposed to take votes away from Biden. But Biden never lost that 50%. And as we come into this, all these numbers show that there's a peak on the craziness of the right in this country. There's a peak.
Right.
Sorry to go on that tangent, but it really fits into the fact that we've been set up for me to not be. Jeff, I still haven't smoked my cigar since the election, and I want to smoke my damn cigar.
I hear you.
And it's wearing us out.
I mean, Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to say. You can go down Scope and you're going to find 10 or 12 scopes that say Trump will be president. So it's kind of hard to light a cigarette when so many people are so confident that everything we know to be fact is not true.
and it seems that there's a third of the country or so that doesn't give absolutely two shits about this country and has more fealty to Trump and his sack of lies and the idolatry of what he is than care about their families, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. I've got
that out of here.
I've got other stats, but
well, Ace, I know you're beaming over there too. I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, it's okay. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the election was set up in a way that Trump had all the opportunity actually to take the lead, at which point he never took the lead either, which is the other thing that didn't work out, is he never really won enough states to even go and make a speech that he won because he was never really in the lead. That's when we did get lucky in that way, because the votes, the way they started coming in, some of the big states like California and all these, Joe Biden after a while was always kind of up. He was up regardless of what the votes were coming in. But we knew this was going to happen, and it was just all a setup from Republicans to allow them to rile everything up. But if you close your eyes and you think about it and you go, well, what if it wasn't? What if it was close? What if it was down to one state? What if it was down to just Georgia?
Right.
10,000 votes. If you don't think they would have taken this election from one state, they would have easily done it. At that point, Lindsey Graham, he would be calling, and they're like, oh, well, we need to do signature match again. Oh, no envelopes? I guess we got to toss them out. And then you're getting into really shifty areas where the Supreme Court actually has to make a decision on the potential law of something versus a decision on nothing, because they're bringing the Supreme Court nothing. They're saying there was fraud, but we can't show it to you, and the Supreme Court is not going to do that.
Yeah, what I just keep hearing is there's just no way 80 million people voted for Joe Biden, and I'll respond with something like, well, maybe the 300,000 people dead from COVID maybe swung a few voters you weren't anticipating to have a strong opinion, Maybe something like that had an effect, because they just pretend like there's no way anyone can be motivated about Joe Biden. It's like, well, again, 300,000 dead people is a lot of motivation.
Well, and another thing is for Joe Biden, people aren't necessarily motivated for him. They're just motivated to hate Trump.
That's not true. I don't agree with that.
I don't like that.
I'm very motivated for Joe Biden. Very motivated.
The right.
I don't have a Joe Biden poster. I am very motivated for what we're going to do.
I met Joe Biden and I decided to vote for him as I talked to him, but that leads us into, and so I want to, before we do this, and I want to give it to Zach to do this, because it seems like Zach is the one who's maybe got the most confidence here. Zach, how close am I to being able to smoke my cigar?
I would say you probably could have smoked that cigar a few days ago.
Talk to me about that. Spike the football. Come on.
Look, Donald Trump lost, and the fact that he's talking about a military takeover, a military coup, this is America. We don't have military coups here, and that's for a reason. I think a lot of people are scared because they've never seen our system bend this way, but it's important to recognize our system bended. It did not break because it's strong enough to not break. So Donald Trump will not be our president. He will not continue to rule for 4 more years. Joe Biden will assume the office on January 20th, and there's literally no path for Joe Biden or for Donald Trump to become the president.
So with that said, this is why it's time to move on. With the courage of Zach and others, with the courage of 80 million people who helped to defeat Donald Trump in a landslide election. It wasn't close. It was a butt whooping. It was more of a butt whooping than he did to Hillary. And here we go. Yep. We're going to turn the corner now, and we're going to go into something that we'll do probably for the next several years. And we're going to talk a little bit about, we've got a avid centrist on the panel tonight, and it's Ace. He's holding the line of the Can I say center left, Ace?
Yes, I'm a radical centrist.
A radical centrist.
Taking it from Loeffler. Radical centrist.
It's like a sharp sphere. He's radically spherical.
and on the left, from parts unknown, weight unknown, origin unknown, we've got Zach over there, who is going to represent a progressive side of this conversation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be moderator, and I'm going to utilize my stopwatch and keep track. We're going to go for the next stretch. In about 30 minutes, I'm going to go a little past the halftime mark. We're going to open it up for 5 minutes to the crowd, just so people can ask each of you guys questions, or us if they want to. And then we'll finish off with more of this center versus left. How do I say it, Zach? What's the right way to frame this?
I think it's just like that, the divide between the center left and the, I guess, progressive.
So for tonight, for the sake of language, we'll leave it there, and I will not trip up on myself too much. So I'm gonna have a little bit of a moderator role. And then what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have Jeff, who is a genius on so many levels, but as an organizational strategist, Jeff is going to lead the voting, lead the scorecard or the scoring. He's going to be our judge tonight. And Jeff is probably going to utilize the comments from the crowd as well to keep track or to ask questions. I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to have some fun with this shit tonight because it's been a long time and we need to have some fun. So is everybody game for that?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead with and I'm not going to lead it with questions because I know you guys have your own content, but I'm going to lead it with structure and say, Zach, you have the floor to begin talking about the rift between the things that and you can start with the cabinet or you can start with policy, and I'll follow your slides, whatever you want me to do. Tell me what to do, because we've set it up where I've got all this material and I'll work with you. But lead us through why you think there's a critical rift, to at least start with, a critical rift that we need to be thinking about. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I think a few seconds ago, I made a statement and Ace very vehemently disagreed with it. And I think that shows where some of the rift is. So I believe that a lot of Biden's support came from a dislike of Trump, and Ace disagrees. So I think that's part of the disagreement.
Well, let's just stop the car right there, because I know that that's one of them. And let's dive into that. Let's go into this concept that Biden was not a popular candidate or that he was a beloved centrist candidate. Let's stay there for a little bit.
Well, first of all, Biden was always leading in the polls. And I would argue the reason that we won is not because a whole bunch of leftists and Bernie people and AOC people voted. It's because a whole bunch of right center people voted for Biden and not for Trump. And the way we do that is by running a centrist policy, a policy that will feed both sides of the conversation, moving forward, but not jumping into what I would call, ice cream for breakfast land, which is a lot of the times how I feel with Bernie people, is that it's being a lot of things are being sold that I don't think that we know can't be done this fast. It's going to cost a fortune. And sometimes it's not genuine. It's disingenuous because these policies will never pass and they have no ability of passing. So when you run centrist, you can get Republicans to come to you. You can win states like Georgia. I've posted many times that I bet Biden would win Georgia. I bet it big. I won big. I knew Biden was going to win Georgia because the message was fine. It wasn't Medicare for all. It wasn't Green New Deal. It wasn't this huge push to the left. It was, let's come back to the middle. Let's work with both sides. Let's get it done. And the fact is, this country likes both sides to work together. They like it. That's why another reason I don't think we're going to win the Senate is the country likes this yin and yang. This is the country we live in.
Okay, and Zach?
Marty, if you could pull up that graphic.
Yes, sir.
The presidential primary results.
Yes, hold on. Let me grab it.
I'll say while we're getting the art up, one thing, I think the idea that Biden won because he wasn't Trump, it presents this false equation that there were people like, for example, myself, who's always voted Democrat, that somehow we would have maybe voted for Mitt Romney, but we just couldn't stand Trump so bad that we voted Democrat. Whereas I've always voted Democrat. I would tend to always vote Democrat because I have foundational Democratic policies that I agree with, and that's the way I vote. So I think it's a bit of a right talking point to say, well, you just didn't vote. You voted Biden because you just hate Trump. Well, no, absolutely not. I would never have voted for Trump. I wouldn't have never voted for a Republican in his place, with the exception of just some extraordinary politician that just, united like, say, Nixon did in his second election. I mean, there have been Republicans that were extremely popular, but I think it's a right talking point to just be like, you didn't vote for. Now, the truth is, it probably was decided, by the way, by people who have voted Republican and didn't vote for Trump because of the down ballot wins and the fact that Biden won. There are Republicans who didn't vote for Trump because they don't like him. But I don't believe there's any Democrats that voted for Biden because he just wasn't Trump. To me, that talking point doesn't make any sense.
So real quick to respond to what Jeff said, I guess it's more of, you wouldn't vote for a Republican unless it's like some outstanding Republican. So right. I guess I do believe that a lot of it was an anti-Trump sentiment, but I also would agree to an extent of it's also an anti-Republican sentiment.
The difference.
Okay, let's talk about this graph.
The locus of control is important. The locus of control is important. Sorry, I just want to reground this one point. I voted the way I voted because of what I believe in, not an aversion to something I don't believe in. And I think there's an important difference. Yes, they result in the same thing, but I think there's an important difference.
Sure. So the reason why I want to bring up this graphic is clearly you see Joe Biden winning, and this is of the Georgia primary. So why am I bringing this up? Well, we know that Biden won Georgia by 10,000 votes. Here we can see that Bernie Sanders got at least 100,000 votes during the primary. So you do need progressives, and you do need to listen to them. And I would say that even if you have 1/10 of that number, 1/10 of the Bernie Sanders supporters who say, well, I hate Trump, so that's why I'm going to vote for Biden because I don't like him. And
when did this vote happen? When did Georgia vote in their primary?
Super Tuesday, if I'm correct.
Really, Super Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah. So this shows, you have 100,000 people who are progressive in Georgia. Now, obviously, Georgia is not a progressive bastion, but you can't forget the fact that you won a state by 10,000 that has at least 100,000 Bernie voters.
Well, I think I would take a completely different way. There's no guarantee that those 101,000 people voted for Bernie would have voted for Donald Trump. So they're going to vote for the Democratic candidate. So they did, and there's no way of knowing who they voted for. Joe Biden got a huge majority. This is, he didn't get, if it was 40%, then I would say, wow, that's a big talking point. He got 84% of Georgia. That's a huge thing. That tells me if Bernie Sanders was running as president, because that's what we're talking about, then he loses Georgia in a landslide. That's what that tells me. He loses it in a landslide. It's not even close.
So the point I'm trying to make is not that if Bernie Sanders was running. My point is that you can't forget the progressives that did help elect Joe Biden. Yeah. And to your point, most Bernie supporters are not going to vote for Donald Trump. That means they're not affirmatively voting for Biden. They're just making sure that they're not voting for Trump, which is to my point of people didn't vote for Biden. They voted against Trump.
I guess my question behind that is where I'm confused is the argument that the Democrats, the centrists, should not forget about progressives and have some progressive policies, or is your argument that we should be Bernie Sanders progressive and go super left and do that and have him be the leader? Because I agree we should have some progressive policies that move closer to Bernie Sanders. But I will tell you that none of Bernie Sanders' policies I would agree with. I would come close to them, but I wouldn't even I would come halfway to Bernie Sanders' policies in some cases, and in some cases not even close. So yes, I'm moving towards him, but I'm not I'm not letting him be a leader. And that what your graph just showed that if he ran in Georgia, we Democrats have zero chance of winning Georgia. That's gone off the board. Done.
Okay.
So to respond to that is right now in the year 2020 going on to 2021, Bernie Sanders did not win. He lost that primary. So what I'm asking for right now is to respect the fact that progressives did play a massive role and to have them shown in the Biden administration, which has been happening with appointments like Deb Haaland. So that was the point I'm trying to make there. In the future going forward, what I'd say to the Georgia aspect is, you're right. At this point in time, progressives cannot win in Georgia, but you do not need Georgia to win the Electoral College. You need 270 votes. So I think that would be my response is, yes, we do not have the votes to win in Georgia at this point, but we also don't need to win in Georgia at this point.
Okay. That's probably another issue for debate at this time. But I think we should come back and let's get into some issues that we differ on. And I think maybe one to kick off, because it came up as we've sort of thinking about this. Should we talk about Medicare for all? Should we go down the road of seeing the sides? Because the reason this is such an important debate to have is because over the next years, it's already starting now, liberals and Democrats have a great way of eating their own. And if we don't have healthy discernment about the nuances of where people are coming from and try to work together with those nuances, we'll end up fighting. I know, because I've seen this happen many, many times. So Medicare for all, where do you stand and why? And then we'll talk about, can there be some sort of a compromise? But let's go down this road. And Ace, you're up, dude.
Can you guys see my screen?
Oh, no, I can't.
It's a Medicare for all website from Bernie Sanders.
Wait, there you are.
Your favorite.
Yeah, my favorite.
Oh, you're sharing your main screen.
That's fine.
Well, you need to select your other tab to share.
I have two tabs. I have multiple tabs. Can you see this one?
We're seeing just your
screen with the whoops.
We were seeing your broadcast screen, not your tabs.
Okay.
Ooh, we got an Inception thing. That was cool.
Oh,
yeah, that was cool.
Let me just share the tab.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Share. There you go.
Boom.
Nailed it.
So here's my issue with Medicare for all. And this has been my issue because I love healthcare subject. It's my favorite. And the problem with Medicare for all is when you dig into it, you find out that there's a lot of ice cream for breakfast type of stuff and a lot of stuff that's not even being revealed. Here's your main point. This is Bernie Sanders' website. This is his key website. And no one would argue with me that Medicare for all is Bernie Sanders' baby. Well, would it surprise you that on his website, this is all he puts about it? He puts 1, 2, 3, 4 key notes about it, none of them of which include how much it will cost. None of them, which is my favorite subject, is how long it will take to implement. That's all it does. You would also be very surprised to know that he does not actually link the actual bill anywhere on his website. Anywhere. 0 places. I've looked. It's not on there. If you go to play issues and you scroll down and you look at something like the Green New Deal and you click on more, this sucker has pages and pages and pages and pages. Medicare for all, 4 bullet points. 4. That tells you we need to start asking some questions. And then my main question is not only how much is it going to cost, but the key question is how long will it implement? And my final question is, are we really sure this is the place where we want to move our country? Because although the Bernie people will tell you this, just because we have Medicare for all, it does not mean that it's a socialist government. What they're not telling you is that it sways the percentage of people working for the government from under 10% to 45% plus some. So all of a sudden, Medicare for all, and we become very close to most of the people in the United States working for the government, being paid by the government. And then everybody do this little practice with me. Close your eyes and imagine Donald Trump running our healthcare system that he has 100% control, and 45% of the people pay for it, 100% of the people use it. He has all of the control. Imagine that person having that much control. We just saw him control the freaking mail and break it. Do you know what he would do with a healthcare system? Medicare for all will make this country socialist. It will. It has to, because there's too many people that are going to get paid by it. That's just fact. The last point I want to make, the biggest industry of people that have jobs is the healthcare sector. That's the biggest. It would now become all government. All.
So I guess I have a couple things to ask you. Is Canada a socialist government?
I mean, some of it, yeah. But Canada is also small. And I think Canada has private as well, doesn't it?
Anything that's private is supplemental.
Medicare for all doesn't allow supplemental. 100% government. No supplemental. And another thing that I can talk about later, but it also mentions nothing about people that work for the insurance industry, which employs millions and millions of people. They would lose their job day one because no one is selling health insurance. No one is in the insurance industry. That industry would be completely abolished. For a country that likes private industry, since when do we abolish a private sector completely?
All right, I'm gonna cut it off, and now Zach, I want your full frontal approach at pro Medicare for all. Let's Ace gave the first round, and I think there's some points to be made, but I know that there's other points to be made. So please come at it with a fresh round, and you're up as you want, and I'll grab whatever screens you need.
Sure. So to the point that Ace initially made about Bernie Sanders not having it completely linked, you can make a solid case that was a bad political move, but I don't think that actually hurts the policy itself. If you look at what the popularity of Medicare for all is, it's consistently polled very well. So Marty, if you could pull up the Fox News exit poll, what that Fox News exit poll will show you is that there's 72% favor of a change to a government-run healthcare plan. So the American people do want it. And
I'm looking back. I'm sorry.
It's okay. To the idea that it's going to snowball into a socialist country, I can pinpoint basically every European country that is not turned into a socialist country. And I would especially point to the UK, which has a universal healthcare system, a single-payer system, and has a very far-right leader, but has not turned into a socialist dictatorship. I can also point to the Swedish countries who have done very well with these systems. I can point to how in Germany, the single-payer system actually came about by the far-right party, because the far-right party decided, hey, if we give people healthcare, they're going to like us more with our other ideas. So this assumption that Medicare for all or a single-payer system is going to lead to a socialist breakdown is just not true.
Why not a public option?
So the reason why I don't think a public option would work is because the big selling point for Medicare for all is that it's going to bring down the prescription drug cost, and it's going to have to force these companies that make the drugs to deal with 300 million people. So if I'm bargaining just for myself, if I were to say I'm an uninsured person, I am just myself. So if you're an insurance company or if you're a drug company, you can say, I'm going to jack up the price as much as I want on you because there's other people who would pay that price. Mm-hmm. So that's going to screw me over. But if we have 330 million people who are all being represented by the US government, the US government can say, hey, you're going to lower the price. Otherwise, you just lost 330 million people and you're going to go out of business. And so that means these prescription drug companies have to bend to the will of the American people, and they cannot continue to jack the prices up. So why does this matter? Well, if you have a public option, who's not going to buy into it? You're going to have the wealthiest members of society not buy into it. Those people are going to be the people we need to actually pay these taxes to support the rest of us. So we're going to have what's essentially a half-assed system that is ultimately going to come down on the poorest Americans when we're trying to help the poorest Americans.
Tell me about this poll. What is it? And I'm just leaving it up because I want to. Those numbers are profound, and you're using those numbers to make a jump into Medicare, right?
Yeah. So another thing, Medicare is one of the most popular programs in this country's history, and so this Fox News poll was taken right after was taken during the election. It's an exit poll from the election, and it's clearly showing that there's a 72% favorability rating for a government-run healthcare system. So the American people do want this, and I would make the argument that the true centrist position is to be in the center of what the American people want, and the American people clearly want a government-run healthcare plan. So if you really wanted to be a centrist in America, you should be running on a government-run healthcare plan.
I'd like to point out only Fox News would have 2 choices and 101%. Yeah. Only Fox News can mess that up. With 3 choices, you can get 101% because you round. But with 2 answers, there's no mathematical way to get 101%. Sorry.
I'm going to say that.
The judge noticed. I'm just telling you as the judge. Foul. But
I'll pull up a Harris poll.
Right. They're probably approximately right.
It is very favorable, but I would also argue that a huge section, and I would say, I don't know, but it's a huge section of people after me talking think that Obamacare is a government-run healthcare system. And it's not, but it theoretically could be if the government is paying private industry. It is mildly government-run. So I don't know how much of those people are thinking Obamacare, which is a favorable healthcare system currently, and expanding it would only take us closer to Medicare for all, not further away. But once again, I'll be right back. The centrist policy is not to look at a poll and go, oh, well, everybody loves Medicare for all, let's do it. The centrist policy is to look at both sides and get a better item for this country. And you said that Medicare for all is nothing has to do with socialist, except it was written by a person that says he's a socialist, and it is a socialist policy. Like I told you, it's all about the numbers in the end. We have to remember about who controls the power. The more people that will work for the government will give more control to the government. And if we reach a huge section, then the country will become more socialist. It just will. That's how the numbers work, which is my biggest issue with Bernie people. No, I love your ideas, and I don't, unlike a Trumpster, I don't look at you guys as bad people. You guys want what's best for this country. The problem is that you guys are not anywhere near a majority, not even close. You're the minority of the minority. And I'll show you some graphs to prove that. There's not a lot of, and by that, I'm not talking about votes. I'm talking about people in power, which is the most important. Those are the people doing laws, doing bills, doing their work, changing this country. It's the minority of minority, and they get no work done because no one wants to work for them. That is the problem. So if you want me to join Bernie Sanders, a person that hasn't done anything in over 20 years, and go with a policy that he couldn't even implement in Vermont, why would I do that? That is not a centrist idea. Centrists look at both sides and go, I like this, let's put them all together and make the whole thing work. That's what centrists like. And I'll show you, we can go into that argument a little bit later. Marty was away, I didn't want to show you, but I'll show you some graphs where the Bernie people, you guys don't have any power. And because you don't have any power, we'll listen to you, but we don't have to change the whole policy because of you.
Well, I disagree on the sense that in the Congress, the Progressive Caucus does have some significant power. And
I'll show you a graph.
Okay. All right. Let's see some graphs.
Not only will I show you a graph, I will also show you the danger of losing. Because when we lose, the left, the center, the middle, when we lose and the Republicans win, they win big. And it hurts us a lot more. I'll show you that once you're ready.
All right, let's see it. Am I ready to show it, Ace?
No. Let Zach. I'll start pulling.
Real quick. So Ace, you had mentioned the 16 million people who are in the insurance industry, right, or the healthcare industry. Well, I would point out that there's 84 million people who are underinsured or uninsured. So to ignore that fact, right, there's significantly more people who are underinsured or uninsured than there are people who are working in the industry or in the insurance industry. So that is a problem, right? We can't have 84 million people in our country be uninsured or underinsured. That's not right. And to the aspect that it's the centrist position to take both views, I think you're still ignoring the fact that a lot of Americans do want Medicare for all. And if Marty has time after showing your thing,
yes,
I have another one that shows another poll from Hill Harris that shows there's 69% approval. And if I'm correct,
do I have that poll?
You should.
Okay.
So, and this one is not Fox News messing up its numbers.
Oh, I got it right here. There you go. This is it, yeah?
No, that's a different one. That's a CNN exit poll.
You see it over here?
Well, 69%.
That one. Right.
This one here?
Yeah. So once again, you see overwhelmingly favorable numbers for Medicare for all. So I understand what you're saying about in Congress. And yes, I think we need to separate that this is an extremely left-wing position in Congress, but for the American people, it's not that much of a crazy progressive issue. It's a centrist issue. The American people want a single-payer healthcare system.
It could be a centrist issue. It's just not Medicare for all. There's 5 different Medicare type bills. One of them called Medicare for America, which it has a public, which a lot is basically it's the same idea as Medicare for all who want it. There's also that plan. It's called Medicare for America. There's also Medicare as a supplemental, which is more like a public option Medicare. There's different ways to skin this beast. That's what centrists want. We want to move closer to everyone having health care. What we do not want is the government to come in and abolish a system that currently has 80% of all Americans having some kind of health care and say, this is your only way of getting health care. Now we control this huge industry. We pay for everybody that works here. We pay for all the health care, and we give Donald Trump, number 2, the ability to control all of it. That's the problem. So there's other ways of doing Medicare without doing Medicare for all, which is only government.
Zach.
Well, once again, the American people, as I've shown in a couple different polls, are not really siding with you on that issue. I understand that
Medicare is a big horse. You could do it any which way. If I gave you a public option to buy Medicare, that has nothing to do with Medicare. It doesn't say Medicare for all. It just says Medicare. If I can get Medicare, I can go on the exchange and just click on a button and get Medicare. Why wouldn't they support that? I'm talking about how everybody gets it. You're talking about Medicare for everyone with no choice.
Is that what you're talking about, Zach?
So, yeah, I'm talking about a single payer system. At its heart, that's what I'm talking about. And the reason why, as I tried to explain a little bit earlier, that a single...
let me stop you. Would you get rid of private healthcare insurance companies to do that?
For anything that isn't supplemental, yes.
Okay, that's a key piece I needed to just be clear on.
Which is about 45. So 45% of the population would start working for the government, because healthcare has about 35% of the population works for a healthcare type. Industries, everybody would just work for the government. So we would go from 9 to 10, which is Army, everybody that works for the government, and we would add another 35 to it, which would make it 45% would be. This would bring us really close to a socialist country.
Let me ask a question to you, Ace. Does that mean that the dairy industry is under the federal government due to its subsidies? Is the dairy industry socialized?
It's kind of like Obamacare question, right? Because technically Obamacare is not, because it funnels the money through a private industry with rules and regulation, which I'm a lot more comfortable with, because the private industry could still perform. But the plan, the Medicare for All is a fully government-run system, like completely government-run.
And I understand the force that the federal government would exert then on all of these healthcare people, but at least initially, unless I'm missing something, it would basically be our current system, but instead of all these different insurance companies and Medicaid and Medicare and all the different ways hospitals get paid, they would all be getting paid just from that one payer, right? Single payer. We all get that.
Government.
And obviously that payer then has a bunch of authority, right? To lower its own prices, fix maybe overpriced medical supplies and overpriced pharmaceuticals, but also could just decide hospitals are overpriced, right? And just start cutting funding. My point though is that even in that scenario where Medicare, I guess the point, it's kind of I guess it's sort of just a gray area. You're saying that the entire health industry would go under the federal government and become socialized. Whereas I guess I'm arguing there would still be like a half step, right? Because they'd be getting reimbursed by the federal government, but you would still have all the hospital companies.
Not how the plan is written. I thought that too. Medicare for America is written that way. Medicare for All is written by a person that says he is a socialist, and he wrote a socialist policy. It would, in stages, remove private industry and create a government industry, in which point the government is saying how healthcare is run. Let me throw a little bomb at you. When you have a president like Donald Trump and all of a sudden he doesn't want there to be abortions, he can go ahead and just sign an executive actions that does not allow any healthcare industry to perform abortions, and then the Democrats have to sue him forever. Or if he doesn't want people to have a transgender change, he could sign an executive action. And then you go to the court, which is now super conservative, and you let the court make a decision. Should the government be paying for abortions? Should the government be paying for transgender? This is the kind of power you cannot give the government at all. It is a dangerous proposition. Very dangerous. This is the problem. The Democrats do this all the time. They're very short-sighted. They see a win and they take a win. And the last time they took a win, we now have a ton of judges that have been put in because the Democrats wanted to pass a couple of judges. It's the same reason that they should not abolish the filibuster, because be careful what you wish for.
Fair enough. Ace. We're going to let that go. You've had a time.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask Ace this question. So should we just let private businesses decide what they are and are not going to cover? Because
no, we should do what Obamacare did.
Obamacare didn't.
Fixed the problem. Obamacare fixed the problem.
Obamacare did not fix the
private industry. Well, it would have fixed the problem if we keep on moving on it. It will fix the problem. Obamacare told the private industry, here's what you can and cannot do, lowering costs. Then Obamacare, the next portion of Obamacare is going to be a private option. Once there's a private option, then basically anyone could just log into a website and get an insurance plan. If they cannot afford one, it will be Medicare, which means now you're really cutting down from that 18 million down to 1 or 2 million of people that just don't want to do something. But they don't want to go on a website. They don't want to. We can figure out how to deal with it. My argument for getting better health care is just moving towards closing the gap. Keep on closing the gap. Your argument is to blow everything up and start all over. And I don't like that argument. And when you're
the
done,
system we have now isn't working.
Sorry.
I mean, the system we have now isn't working for a lot of people, though. I mean, the number that I put up or told you earlier, 84 million people who are uninsured or underinsured, that is a massive failure on the American system. That number should be 0. And under Biden's proposed plan, and this is under, I guess, a crippled version of Obamacare, I mean, we have these numbers. Under a Medicare for all system, you would have 0 uninsured people in America.
Well, actually, I would argue you wouldn't have that, because your plan, the other thing about Medicare for all, we have to be honest about this. It won't pass. It won't pass. I don't understand why we keep on going around this little thing.
Well, okay, so I want to slow you down on that one, Ace, because I want to slow you down, because that's the power. And I've left this thing sitting here in our face this whole time, because this number is steadfast. This 70% number is, I'm sorry?
It just says Medicare. There's
so it does, and you're right. There's several different on-ramps and iterations of Medicare. But I think that Zach's point does bear some fruit, that there are people who are simply being left out. And part of what we're trying to figure out here, I think, is to get past the question of whether or not everyone should have health care, because it's still a question.
It shouldn't be, yes.
It shouldn't be. And I think that that's part of what Biden has tried to say. He's got his own way that he wants to address that question, but by God, it's got to end leaving people out. So I do think that the centrist position is going to get its time in the sun here. The problem with the centrist position is when you dance with the devil often has a couple tricks up his sleeve. And when we go back to talking about, Obamacare 2.0 or Biden care, whatever it's going to be, those people have the ability to clog the arteries of conversation and change in ways that kill decades if we keep going back to the same devil. And so there is part of this conversation where we need, I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a socialist outcome, but we need a governmental hammer to force this conversation forward. And we got it forward last time. And then as soon as it happened, the machine that said, oh, they're taking away our rights, the individual mandate's just against freedom. That bullshit has to be predicted and dealt with in a PR campaign. Exactly. To tell people what's so good about this thing.
I agree. The good news is with Obamacare and expanding it, what you're going to do is you're going to add on more people onto the plan. The more people you add onto this plan, the more voters you will get, because they translate. Everybody that uses Obamacare, it's got a huge popularity on it. People like Obamacare, and they hate when you take it away. Even in Georgia, they stopped running against Obamacare. What you're going to do is the more people you put on it by adding more policies and expanding Obamacare, you're going to get to the point to where Republicans can no longer run on abolishing Obamacare. They can only run on changing it and making it, quote unquote, better. And they're going to get to the point to where they can't remove people. They'll have to work to add more states, more things on. And one thing, and I've talked about this, the reason that I love this subject is it's actually kind of funny. The reason, if anybody asked, why don't the Republicans have a healthcare plan? Everybody always asks them.
Right.
I can tell you that. That's the funniest thing. They don't have one because Obamacare is the Republican plan. It's a Mitt Romney plan. See, when you're doing healthcare, you really only have 3 options. All private, okay? Then you have half and half, and then you have socialist. And by half and half, you could split it anywhere you want.
Would you say we're half and half right now?
We're basically on the half and half plan. By half and half, not 50-50, but it's some private, some government. Right. That is the There's not a fourth option. There's no fourth option. It's just those 3. Obama took their option and sold it. And that's why they can't have a plan, because any plan they come out with is just going to be an Obamacare Plus or an Obamacare Light, at which point they would get killed. And they can't go more government because then they'll get called socialist. This is my argument against Medicare for all, because when we clog up the airways with Medicare for all, which has been dubbed socialist, which it is, We have to be honest with it. It is socialist. It's more socialist.
But it does not lead to a socialist government.
Yes, it does. I will show you. Have to know that it's all about math. When you add 35% of the public being paid by the government, that makes it more socialist. More people will be getting paid by the government. Imagine if everybody gets, what's a socialist government? It's the government supplies paychecks. They pay you, like France. A lot of people work for the government. That's how it works. When we add 35% of the industry, that's a lot of people. It's going to make it more socialist. That's just the reality of it. And socialism.
Wait, so do you think France is a socialist?
As long as we can pick and choose how socialism works.
Okay, Zach.
Well, so do you think that France is a socialist country?
Yeah. I mean,
okay,
it is. I mean, there's different forms of socialism. And America does socialism in an interesting way. We take government money and we funnel it through a private industry. And that seems to work. That's just the way this country, like Medicare, or, some things like that, they get funneled through a private industry.
Well, but working for who, though? Because it's not working for the 84 million people who are underinsured.
You get a private option. If you get a private option, you're going to turn that 18 all the way down to 3 or 4 million. And after 3 or 4 million, then the next year you pass another bill just to cover that. It's much easier to keep on moving this way versus abolishing the whole thing and starting over, which is what you're trying to do.
Well, I want to give him some space to reorganize his argument because there's been a lot of sort of attack from the center out to the left. But I think I would like to hear, Zach, what you want to see. I think that might be a better way to get into this. What would that look like over 18 months to 3-year implementation of something that Bernie has been promoting? Because I think you are, as the people I know, you're in the heart of the progressive movement. I mean, I've read your comments. I've talked to you online a few times in that way. You understand where you're coming from. And so I really want to know where you're coming from, because this is a debate. This isn't a win-lose. This is a debate. We're moving forward together here. This is us healing.
So I think on the topic of healing, I think something Ace and I both want is for every American to have health care. I think that is both our goals. Now, something that we do disagree on is I would like to see the end of the private health insurance industry. I don't think it should exist. And it's a fundamental question of, should there be an industry that literally profits off of the pain and suffering of other people? Because that is what the private industry is. The private health insurance industry is. And so a lot of people on the left have that viewpoint that this should not be a privatized industry. I'm also coming from the standpoint of, yes, I want the government to be in charge of all this because we can hold the government accountable. We can't hold private industries accountable in the way we can hold the government accountable.
This gets into a key socialist and left progressive sort of piece that says that bureaucracy, they agree with the right that the bureaucracy is not to be trusted, but it's that it's better to be able to vote for your bureaucrats than it is to hope that you hand Chevron a bunch of money and they do the right thing with their fracking outfit. It's different because you can't vote for a bureaucracy that's in a private corporation. There's just nothing to do. If they want to be selfish and awful, they can, right?
But you could do rules and regulations. We found that we realized that we don't like people getting kicked off of insurance because they have cancer or they have pre-existing condition or any of the other reasons, and you do a rule and regulation that makes them not allowed to, and you have to keep on pushing that over and over and over.
But the thing about the for-profit is they have the finances to be in opposition to every step of that way. And part of a more socialized medical system is it's inside of government is where those decisions are made. You don't have to fight with the executives and CEOs making stock market based decisions versus healthcare decisions. I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, and I go ahead. I'll give you. Go ahead.
I have a minor fatalistic point. Every now and then I think, well, what if we did nothing? What if we fixed nothing? What of course happens is whatever number. I'll just go with Zach's 84 million. It sounds a little high to me, but I'll go with it. 84 million uninsured people. What happens is, of course, they don't go see doctors because they don't have a way to pay for the doctor's visit. So they wait until they're sick. They go to the hospital. Of course, they're treated because hospitals generally won't turn away sick people, as that's a huge PR nightmare and semi-unethical as a doctor. So what happens, of course, is you now have all these people that become a drain on a private company, being the hospital. And so what happens, and we see it happen, is hospitals have to close. Basically, that's the main thing. Of course, the other thing happens is your treatment options get cut. You show up at the ER, you got chest pain. It turns out you need a bypass, but you can't afford a bypass, so you're given medication to treat the symptoms and hope to just limp along as long as you can before your heart fails. So I often have this argument against people as you talk about, let's just say someone who's saying it needs to be 100% privatized. Obviously, as people can't afford insurance, what happens is you now have patients who can't pay for their care, which runs private companies, private hospitals out of business. So at some point, you have to rectify the problem of going Dutch just isn't working. And as the system completely fails and breaks down, these 84 million people eventually become poor enough due to their medical expenses to go on Medicaid, which then, of course, you basically fail towards Medicaid for all, which is vaguely Medicare for all. So at some point, we have to, figure out where we're going before we get there. Before we get to the point where all the poor people are on Medicaid for all, or everyone is on Medicaid for all, we need to figure out how to handle that slippery pig.
And Jeff and Ace, I'm going to cover your face for a second, but this comment needs us all to just chew on it for a sec, because when we lift up the great God of getting coverage for all, we still have this situation.
We do.
And I offers horrible insurance that I can't afford with a $5,000 deductible for one person.
No,
my God,
that's ridiculous. I have a solution for this. Zach showed the policy was. I kind of understand how Medicare for all. There is a different way of doing it. Basically, the idea is you create a competition for private industry. So if you allow a public option, then more people will start jumping off of the private option because the public option is going to be cheaper. And then at that point, you will create some sort of competition. It will require the government to still put up a whole bunch of rules and regulations so private industry doesn't go crazy. You still have to bring them in and say, here's what you can do in private. And then, so if you're like that person said, well, mine is $5,000 and I pay a crap load. Well, then at that point, he would have he can go on healthcare.gov. He can say, you know what? I want the private option. It's the same thing. It's got a small deductible, $500 per person. It covers me. Yeah, I have a limit of which hospitals I can go to, but that's not bad. I'm just going to take it and I'll go with it. And the more people that start doing that, the healthcare industry will have to start doing something about it. They're going to have to start cutting costs, or else they're going to get pushed out.
Well, one thing I would say to that, though, is under a public option, you have the wealthiest people in America would likely choose to stay on private insurance. And this is a video game term, whales. So video game companies will target people who are willing to spend a lot of money on microtransactions. So most people aren't going to be paying, but the people who do pay are paying a lot. So there's not necessarily proof that under a public option, although you're right in that it would get everyone covered, that it would actually lower the cost overall, because you would still have these insurance companies being able to say, okay, well, rich billionaire buddies over there, they can pay for whatever the hell I say, or just lowering the price down to people who make $100,000 or more. They can have higher prices so that those people will still pay for private insurance, but it's not going to be helpful for all the poor people.
I kind of see what you're saying, but the problem with that is if you think that that Medicare for all, when it's just all run by government, is not going to be abused for rich people, you're highly wrong, because guess which hospitals are going to get all the money from the government? It's not going to be poor people. It's going to be people in Beverly Hills. Their hospital is going to be freaking awesome. And then it's going to be the school industry all over again. We already see the problem with schools. They're going to be the same way. All the nice places are going to be well funded by the government. All the crappy places are not. And then you're going to have poor people that will have no option other than to go to their crappy hospitals. You can't.
Well, hold on. So under a public option, under Medicare for All, there's no in-network or out-of-network. So if there's a great hospital in Beverly Hills, you can go there. Like there's nothing, if you can drive there.
And the second thing is the school model. I agree with you. I've used the school model against single payer for a long time. But in the Medicare for All model, the advantage is, yes, the federal government is effectively in charge because they're paying all the bills. They're dad with the wallet. We get that. But if they're reimbursing procedures based on a reimbursement rate, how does the Beverly Hills hospital get more money than the downtown hospital that sees twice as many patients? In other words, you would only have a difference in the margin of the operating costs of the hospital. The hospital itself shouldn't be getting any grants or funding around the side. They should only be getting money to reimburse the procedures they're giving.
Except that's not how it's going to be.
But that's not how, for example, public schools.
States are going to write their own laws, and
that's possible.
Exactly.
With the public schools,
Sorry.
The public schools are retaining the money from their taxpayers because they're on property taxes, right? So the public school in Beverly Hills gets all that money from all those Beverly Hills people. And so downtown LA, where there's no money, they're getting that little bit of money for their school. So to your point, and I think just Zach would agree, you'd have to be very careful that they didn't start stacking the deck. In other words, Beverly Hills should have the same type of facility as a downtown facility. If anything, maybe even a smaller facility, because the downtown facility should be seeing more patients and therefore getting more revenue.
And Zach said, well, how would they, it has an in-network. Even if they didn't make a policy or regulation against that, the states can write a law. I can tell you one right off the bat that just came to my mind. They'll tell all the ambulances that they have to take them to the nearest hospital. So when you call the ambulances and you live in a poor neighborhood, guess which hospital you're going to get taken. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to say, well, if you have a special procedure, you have to go to your own hospital. It's going to always affect the poor in an unfair way. Only this way around, you won't have any other option because it's all going to be on the government.
Let's talk bias. I'm listening and I'm hearing, Zach, you can make your point in a second, but I want to say I'm going to pull back into this because this is a conversation that's not just ours. This is going to be shared by a lot of folks as we go forward in these months. And I want to pick on Ace first, because in your bias as you make your comments, it sounds to me, and coming as a centrist, that you still value the role and voice and decision making of the private company or the private insurance company or the private hospital decision-making body. And I think that's critical to recognize. And I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying, I'm picking on you, but I'm not. Like, I'm bringing it up. And then, Zach, I think some of where you're coming from is you don't like those people making the decisions about the healthcare chain. Is that fair, or where are we at in that?
Fair, but the only thing is, as always with politics, certain words get a bad reputation.
Okay.
When you say private, people go, oh. But the fact is, I trust private a lot more than I do government. And why wouldn't I? We just saw a form of government. Would I trust this government to run my healthcare, the Donald Trumps? I can't imagine the pain he would have caused with all the power he would have had. He would have had 30-40% more power than he does now.
Jeff, does this point by Ace resonate with you?
It does.
It's unique to me. I'm picking it up, and it's important for us to recognize it, I think.
No, it does. It does resonate with me. I guess, again, it kind of comes back to, like we were just talking about, do you have a school district model that makes Beverly Hills have the best hospitals? Similarly, what is the separation of executive power? Can the president just call up the Medicare for All office and just say, cut reimbursements 10%, and suddenly the whole industry just gets choked out by a phone call? Or is it somehow set up so that it requires legislative oversight? Or, I don't know how all that works. Like, I don't know if Donald Trump could just close the VA tomorrow if he wanted to. I don't know how much autonomous control he would have over it. I get the concept that he could at very least push legislation, push changes, try and drive.
Well, I'm going to push this at Zach in a different way. Zach, isn't what you're suggesting, wouldn't it be easier for us to get where you want to go, for us to push a constitutional amendment requiring every American to be covered by health care? Or something where then we could start to work on how to fill it in, because the idea that a governmental agency is going to supersede or solve all of the problems that all these private companies are addressing every single day, I think there is some question about that transition and whether or not that's a goal we want. But government could say, by God, you're covered and you could walk in any hospital. I'm throwing that at you.
So I guess in the idea of a constitutional amendment, my response is we don't need one. In the Constitution, we already know that the government is there to provide for the general welfare. And I would make the argument that healthcare is part of the general welfare. So
But
I think that's like the constitution.
I'm trying to get to leverage. I'm trying to get to leverage to covering as many people as we want in a fair way.
I guess Marty's asking, wouldn't Medicare for all who want it, or basically if you don't have a job, you got unemployed, or you just don't like your health insurance, you can go to a website, you could sign up and you have Medicare, you're good to go. You pay for it, or it gets subsidized depending on how much money you make. Anyone can get it, and that's it. It's your own choice. Wouldn't that solve the problem? I understand your point of view of, well, it's going to make a crummy system, but we can fix that. I don't understand why we can't make it not crummy. We can make the rich pay a portion to cover up all of the loss. We could do like Social Security does and cover the portion up for Medicare for all who want it versus forcing everyone into Medicare.
Redemption made a comment that said working poor didn't always go into the cutoff. Redemption, that would be Medicaid. What we're talking about is opting into Medicare, which is the retirement guaranteed health insurance program. And so I think what Ace is saying is, what if you could enroll in Medicare?
Anyone could do it.
So I think this is, once again, part of the difference is I would like to see the end of the private health insurance industry.
Okay.
So I think that's, and one of the reasons where I'm coming from is, like, I understand where you said you trust private business more than the government. For me, I trust the government more than private business because I've seen private businesses tell some of my family members, you need to pay $2,000 out of pocket to take this ambulance ride, or we're not taking you to the hospital. And for me, that's an instant deal breaker because I know a family who had to make the choice. I'm not going to the hospital because I can't afford that.
And that's a horrific situation that, and again, and this isn't to pick on anyone, we all have our bias and we have to recognize where that's coming from as we approach this thing, because if we don't, as Ace made it clear, if we don't and we lose elections, this is a wasted opportunity. And so for wherever you are from the left to the center or the center left, we've got to figure some of this stuff out and figure out a way to move forward. And so Zach, for where you're coming from, it's going to need a large PR campaign and a lot of legitimacy work to tell everyone that we want to end. And I agree in some ways that ending private insurance companies would have a lot of benefits. But at this particular juncture, I'm looking at trying to get everybody covered. And Ace's position is pretty strong.
If you click on my share, I could show you a census data of how many roughly you're looking at. So here's the census, and I was playing around with it. You
can zoom in on your end, I think.
I'll zoom in.
Okay.
So here's employment, and there's more. So basically, this industry right here would become all government. So that's 23%. This industry would become all government. And then some of this industry would also become all government. Adding to this industry, and then the industry they don't have here is people that are in the Army or the Air Force, or which is another section. So you're getting really close to the government controlling 45% of everybody that works. One of every two people, or close to two people, will work for the government. So also some of this industry as well, transportation would also be converted. These industries, you would cut this huge section into like by half. That's the problem with this. That is socialist. The person that wrote it is socialist. He said he's socialist. So we cannot beat around the bush on this thing where we keep on saying because we as centrists want Democrats to win because we know when we win, good comes. We know when they win, bad comes. And I will show you a graphic in a little bit on when they win, they're far, far right people. They're Bernies do a lot of work, versus our people, our Bernies, they don't do that much work. In fact, Bernie, unfortunately, hasn't done anything since he's been in Congress. And I will, if you want,
I would push back on that.
Later, go ahead.
He wants to push back on that. I think that's fair.
So, I don't know if you've seen this. Recently, Bernie showed up on, I believe, MSNBC, and they basically did a segment saying, "What have you done?" And they put up a graphic showing that he had only passed 7 things, right? In his entire tenure, he's only passed 7 things. What I'd also point out is that Nancy Pelosi in her entire tenure has only passed 7 things. So it's extremely hard to pass something in Congress. And
I will show that you're pointing. If you can share my graphic, I'll show you exactly. So this is from a government website.
Oh yes, here we go.
And I'll show you. This is Bernie Sanders.
Zoom us in.
This is awesome right here. You could zoom in and you could see where everyone is. This is where Bernie is. Far left. This right here is where Biden is, by the way. He's right here. So he's not even center. Here's where we need to watch out for. And I will show you what Bernie Sanders has passed is this guy. This guy is far, far right. And I'll pull up the bills that he has passed, and it should scare everybody. And this is my point, is when we lose because we run a Bernie Sanders type, they win and they pass and they get these guys like Cruz, Cotton. These people pass all the bills, all of them. So Bernie Sanders bills, like you said, he has passed 7 of them, but notice that most of them are basically nothing bills. They're renaming post offices. He did the best one that he did is this veterans one. That's it. That is dangerous. Now let me show you this. This is the guy that won on the far right, and this should really worry everybody because, like I said, when they win, their people do a ton of work. And that's the scary part. So this is the far right guy. So he has passed 30 bills. But look at the bills he passed. Big work. He passed not only bills, he's passing acts. Acts are much more powerful than bills. And I think he also passed a law. So basically the National Defense Authority, this guy passed it. He's the far right. So when we win, when we lose, they get this guy. And that guy does a lot of work. So we have to be careful when we lose.
So my counter to that is that Bernie Sanders has passed a lot of amendments to bills to acts. So he's got his input in it. And Marty, if you could show the Forbes thing. This is something.
Let me move this out of the way. Just one second.
So the Forbes article, it's going to highlight that something very, very recent. So Bernie Sanders worked with Josh Hawley to pass an amendment to get a $600 stimulus check into the most recent CARES Act, I believe. So that matters, right? Like that's $600, although it's not enough, it's a lot more than $0. Yeah. And so this shows that Sanders ended up getting 5 other progressive Democrats to his side. So my question is by the way, why aren't the more moderate Democrats fighting for this?
This bill didn't pass.
Also, it's a letter urging Senate colleagues.
Yeah, that this one was the one that got blocked. The $600 bill, which was proposed by a Democrat that's basically a Republican. If you look at my map, he's like in Republican zone. He passed the $600.
Oh, wait.
That one actually passed.
He's back.
This did not pass, and I have a worry. My worry is the reason it didn't pass was because it had Bernie Sanders' name in it. Because unfortunately, he's a political. If you sign up with Bernie Sanders, you are going towards a way that is not good for your political life, and people don't want to work with him. If you look at my map, he's the lowest of he doesn't pass a lot of bills. He doesn't work with a lot of people. There's also a report card. If I show you his report card, it's not great. He basically rates lowest out of every single senator out there.
Well, Ace, there's another piece to this, and that is that since Reagan, since before Reagan, but certainly since Ronald Reagan and Limbaugh and the conservative coalitions that have come around with just all that they've done, they have been able to unify beyond their bias. They have been able to say to each other, we disagree in terms of center to right in a lot of these things as you go back to your various points. But the fact, so this is a little bit on Ace's side here, and we're about to turn the corner and talk about something else. But I'm sorry, on Zach's side, Inhofe and those guys are the far end of their party, and they've got the leverage of the party because the party stands with them. Zach is making the prediction that that we need radical change, and we don't stick with our progressive heavyweights on the far left. We appease this fear of the right. The right, all they have to do is stay solid, and they scare the shit out of all of us. Because they won't not vote for their person, and yet we'll win and start this stuff that we're doing right now. Where
I would argue when we go more left, we basically lose and don't pass anything. When we go more center, like Obamacare, we all agree that Obamacare, since it's a Republican policy, essentially, when we go more center, we get things passed, which means we're getting closer and closer. One thing that when you start off the negotiations with Medicare for all or nothing, you basically can't get anything done, and you're political suicide to a lot of people.
What do you think about that, Zach? Because that point seems very fair.
So actually, there's an ongoing debate on the progressive side of how we should approach this. And some people want to force a Medicare for all vote, have it fail, and then use that as a public, because we believe the public stands with us, even though Congress does not. So the idea is we change who's in Congress to match our political ideology. And so I'm on the stripe of we should do that. We should have the vote, have it fail, and then basically create a hit list of these are all the people who did not give Medicare for all, and now we're going to primary you. And we believe that will work.
Ace.
And this is my other point. I did not really want to make this, and I want to say it correctly. The other problem that I have with Bernie fans and super left is you guys are very like the Trump people, the Trumpsters on the other side. You do the same thing on the other side where it's either with us or against us, and that's it. And it's the same rationale. Every single time I talk to a Bernie person and I say, well, how did Pete beat Bernie? They always go to, oh, he cheated. And I always tell them, isn't that a whole Republican thing? You're doing the Trump thing. You guys tend to do a lot of Trump things that the Trumpsters do that we don't like. And you guys do it. And you're in our party. And you're supposed to support us because we are the big train with all the power. The other argument I made is you guys only have one senator, one in out of all the senators, and he's not even a Democrat, by the way. He's an independent. He's
Okay.
So I know I'm splitting hairs here, but we do have Ed Markey, and if you want to count it, Elizabeth Warren, right? So it's more than one. I know I'm splitting hairs a little bit.
Draft, she is nowhere near Bernie Sanders. No, in fact, interestingly enough, Kamala Harris is actually a lot closer to Bernie Sanders than Warren is. Warren is exactly where Joe Biden is. She's not a leftist because she does not support Medicare for all the way you guys do it. She wants to do it in portions that basically go with Medicare for all who won it first, because that is the way.
But that's also what tanked her campaign, though, right? She switched away from the Medicare for all standpoint, and then her numbers in the polls started dropping.
But she was honest with the public. That's the problem. That's the other thing with Medicare for all that's unfair. Find me where, if you can find it, and it's true, nowhere, anywhere can you find where it says how long it will take to implement. The reason is because it's being sold disingenuously. It's being sold by a very old man that knows he cannot sell a policy that's going to take 8 to 12 years to pass, because he can't sell something that says, I need to be in power for 8 years or more to pass my Medicare for all. She read the bill and she said, oh, yeah, you're right. There's no way of passing this policy in 4 years. It's not possible.
Sorry, Zach and Jeff, for your faces. But this is an important point, and I want to lift this up because I'm a center left too. I'm not as far over, but I got to say that part of the thing is, and I understand, I think, Ace, what you're saying about the fact that it's my way or the highway with progressive folks. But the difference between progressives, far progressives, or whatever you want to call far left, and Trump, and I'm not talking about crazy far left, but the progressive caucus, the Bernie Sanders types, they're still engaging in the art of ideas and the discussion of ideas. And the Trumper thing that has happened is pure fanaticism. And there are some, I'm gonna push back and say there are some very obstinate Bernie supporters who tick me off when on the night Joe Biden wins, they can't party with me and recognize this is a victory for them to get Trump out of office. Right. And begin to parse off and peel away saying, well, we better be careful or we'll have a 2.0. I don't think that Biden can be Trump because I don't think that he has the capability to be as sociopathic, narcissistic, crazy as Trump, and etc. But likewise, we cannot discount, and we're going to take a break here in a second. We cannot discount the fact that corporate America and the corporate elite structure, and any of us who went to a college or were part of that or part of an elite structure, that we have options that other people in this country simply don't have. And if we're going to move forward as a unified country, we have to bring everyone along. We cannot live and abide by these two Americas anymore. And so before we move on, I'm going to pause. We're going to get into the Green New Deal because we're going to get into something that I want to lean into a little bit, and some of the picks for cabinet. But before we do that, I want to pause and say thank you to everybody for being here. Is it okay so far? Zach, are you doing okay?
Awesome.
All right, dude. And then I want to stop and I want to ask the audience, the comments. There's been some amazing comments that we've missed. Sometimes when I'm putting those big screens up, I can't see all those comments. So if there's any good questions that we missed or anything to bring up to any of the panel, please let's take 5 minutes and
I knew that I don't compare the burning people as Trumpsters. I just say the styles are very alike. Things we don't like when Trumpsters do, the Bernie people will do that same thing. They do it for the good, and Trumpsters a lot of times don't. They do it for dishonesty, but it's still the same tactic. And the problem is, as I showed you with the far right, that guy's getting a lot of work done. So when we lose, he's getting a ton of work done. So, I need the leftists to come along, get on this train. Let's get a lot of work done.
I'm banging between these two here right now because can we stop the progressive bashing if we want to heal? And redemption, I think, is just lifting it up. Jeff, do you have anything to say about this? Because this isn't going to get us. This isn't going to happen inside the realm of the debate we're going to have.
Right.
But it has to be in the realm of respectful teammate work that I want to talk about a little bit.
I guess my first question is this the way it works? You're either is Bernie Sanders, does he encapsulate the entire progressive part of the Democratic Party? Did I miss a memo? Are all the progressives under Bernie's Medicare for All, Green New Deal? Is that how it works? In other words, you can be progressive and not like Bernie Sanders, right? You can be progressive and not like AOC. So first of all, I think there's a separation there. Medicare for All is a specific Bernie Sanders subset of progressive Democrat topic. So I think there's two things being discussed simultaneously. I personally think the progressive end of the party is important. I think they, for example, brought us through gay rights and brought us a long ways on transgender rights and a lot of other issues that maybe many of us had momentum to not be really fully versed on. So I think there's always the progressive side of the party, I think, is helping us move forward, as the name implies. But as far as the Bernie Sanders brand or the Bernie Sanders supporters and their specific ideals. So I guess when someone says progressive bashing, I mean, I don't think anyone's progressive bashing. I think specifically some of the ideologies of some of the Bernie techniques. And of course, there's a disadvantage here, which is the Bernie group has been unified for 6 years or whatever, and the Biden group, was just sort of tacitly part of the Democratic Party. So we have kind of the Bernie bros, unfortunately, find themselves in a kind of a tent where the rest of us are just sort of around them in the park that is Democratic Party. So it's easy for us to stand outside and say, I don't want to go in that tent because I don't like what they're doing. But I mean, the good news is they have formed up and put up a tent. So, I think I can see it kind of all ways. I mean, I
agree with Jeff. I mean, if you put up that map, I could show you. My issue is not with progressives. My issue is I don't want to be dragged over here. This is my problem. I don't want to be over here. I want to be over here with the Warrens, where they support policies that are not over here. And we tend to always go over here when we talk about progressives. And I don't want to do that because that basically gets us over here because people are afraid of this. And we get this. I want to be right here. This is where Biden and Warren and Feinstein are all there. They're right here. They all support Medicare for all who want it. They all support some sort of Medicare plan, expansion of the Green New Deal, all of that stuff. When we go here, where they have to make a new section, that's when we get into problems because this is so far from here. There's no negotiations and people will get scared and they vote here. And these people get a lot of work done because look at where Cruz is, by the way. And he passes a lot of bills. And look at where this guy is. He's far, far right. We don't have any far, far left people that have a ton of that are in charge. He does.
Well, my counter to that, once again, is one, the amendments, but two, in a realistic view of how our politics are working right now, and you, Ace, would definitely agree with this, progressives don't have power in the Democratic Party.
That's a key point.
But Ted Cruz and the far right have power in the Republican Party. So I think there is a difference there.
Well, the reason that, again, I think I would say the progressives are right here. These are progressives, and this is not a Democrat. He is a independent that tries to move the party even more left. I would be okay with these progressives. This person is not in the Democratic Party, and he tends to slow things down and move things super left. And anytime he puts his name on a bill, it's very hard to pass because as soon as you sign your name with Bernie Sanders, you get a socialist tag. That's the way it works. It's politics. So I'm fully okay with these people. These are progressives. This person is not in the Democratic Party, and he's a socialist. He said so himself. These people are Democrats. That's the problem. He's not even a Democrat. So why are we listening to a person that's not a Democrat for our policies?
I can actually explain the Pete.
Zach, I want you to deal with this comment. I know we're covering your face, and we'll be back to a second, but tell me about this critique because it seems frustrating.
So the reason why that a lot of I don't know, the term Bernie Bros is really to me, it's always described like the toxic of the toxic among Bernie supporters. But I guess if we're going to say all Bernie supporters, one of the reasons a lot of us really dislike Mayor Pete is because he originally stood with Medicare for all and he stood for progressive policies. But then he started getting more corporate money into his campaign and he started switching up his ideals.
That is not true. It's just not true. I know that's not true because I supported Pete. And if you can tell, I like to read the policies. He did support a Medicare plan, and then he, just like Elizabeth Warren, he read the plan, and he realized that the plan does not work. You cannot implement a plan in 4 years. It's not possible, and there's no way to do it. So the best way to get to Medicare for all is to do what Pete said, which is Medicare for all who want it. Get as much people on Medicare, and slowly but surely people will like the plan. If they do, they will start moving off private industry, going into government industry, and we'll get a Medicare for all who want it eventually because you're going to have 60 million people on the plan. The government is going to be like, this thing is working. We need to put more money, and they'll move to it. It's just, that's how he did it. Elizabeth Warren, no one on here really thinks that Elizabeth Warren is disingenuous. I mean, if you think that, I mean, we know she's a smart lady. She read the plan and she was like, listen, I read the plan. My people told me you can't pass this plan in 4 years. You can't even pass it in 8 years. It's going to take 14, 20 years. You have to abolish all of the private industry. You have to retrain people. You have to redo hospitals, systems. It's huge. And Bernie Sanders can't sell that because he's too old. And he can't sell you that he's going to be around here for 8 years. This is why he can't tell you have to vote for me for 8 years. They're just being
Could AOC do it?
About the plan.
Good question. Could AOC do it?
She's
got a whole career.
I would hope she's going to be around for more than 4 years.
The problem with AOC is she better be careful because she is going as soon as she's already being branded as a socialist. Once she brands herself, if you go to my map, she's going to be an outsider. She's going to be another Bernie, where for 20 plus years she passes no bills and passes post office renames because no Democrat is going to want to work with her because that's going to hurt their careers. And that's how Bernie is. I'm not saying he's not a smart guy, but no one wants to work with him. And he doesn't want to work with people either a lot of times because he doesn't want to make enough of a change towards the middle. So AOC better be careful because her career might go down to Bernie Sanders and he doesn't get a lot of things done.
So I'm going to turn. Oh, go ahead, Zach. Sorry, you can respond. Sorry.
So where I push back on that is, one, AOC is coming up in a Democratic Party that is increasingly having more members like her. So Bernie Sanders, to your point, was kind of alone on a rock. But in the next 10, 20 years, I think we are going to see a lot more AOC type Democrats. And in the past 2 election cycles, we've seen a lot of progressives get elected. It's not some 50, 40, super high number, but considering it's only been 2 election cycles, it's growing. And I think that AOC, as her career grows, there will be more progressives she can work with and have a serious caucus. And this also goes to my point of make a hit list of all of the moderates that we want to get out. And to the graphic that you were showing of how Bernie Sanders is super far left, that I don't think that graphic is representative of where the country is at. Our Congress is not representative of our country. And that's
they make all the laws and regulations, so it doesn't really matter. They get reelected, they make all the laws and regulations. The public sometimes doesn't have that power. These guys do. The guy on the far right wrote a bill on how to spend funds during COVID. He wrote a bill for that. He wrote a bill. We didn't write that bill. He did.
And this is my point. We want to make a so-called hit list to get out moderates, put in progressives, because us, the people, have the power to elect the people.
The only way that's going to happen is through policy. And now we're getting further on into the show, and I want to flip gears. We're running into time, and so I want to make sure and touch on this because America's a great country. I love this country, and I love the private industry in this country. It's part of what's made this country so great. But there's also an incredible amount of failings to the private industry. And another element that I think needs to be lifted up here is that it's kind of tough to actually find a pure private industry in this country anymore. There really isn't a untainted industry that hasn't had some sort of governmental help or at least or a full tilt bailout to keep it going. So the myth of an unsocialist America at any level, to me, is a fib.
It's the American way. It is.
What?
That government government puts in money into private industry for it to roll.
To make the country.
The government pushes it. It's like Social Security. Social Security is a socialist program, but you don't have to spend that money on government items. You can.
As was the Transcontinental Railroad. And during the Civil War, Lincoln had the foresight to build the Transcontinental Railroad during the Civil War across the country. And it shows that things can be done And here we go into the Green New Deal. And I'm going to say, and then we can talk about iterations of the Green New Deal. We're obviously not going to cover it all tonight. But we're facing something that I'm going to go to the left on this debate with Zach, probably pretty close to Zach, in saying we need heavy, I'm going to just throw out a number, $5 trillion of money to go into a Green New Deal to kickstart this economy, to redirect and build burgeoning new industries, and to support an economic shift that is going to go very close into the AOC becoming a powerhouse over these next few years, because those issues are going to be popular and those jobs are going to be futuristic. And I got to say that this is a point where the private industry and the private sector, while it's just been sucking cash since pre-Obama, since the Bush years, there's been no ramifications for them. And there's not going to be a change in our economy that's going to address all of these things. And therefore, you need governmental leadership to say, by God, we're going to put 50,000 new electric charging stations on the interstate. We're going to rebuild our bridges. We're going to put smart buildings in place, because industry's never going to choose to put smart buildings in place. It costs too much money. And so I'm going to lift that up and say it's high fucking time that we do some major investment. And if that calls me a socialist on this issue, I don't give two shits, because so is Coca-Cola, so is Exxon, and so is every bank that got bailed out in 2008. So that's the end of my sermon. Let's switch gears.
It won't be socialist. That plan. My only issue with the Green New Deal is the actual words. The Green New Deal. It needs to be rebranded ASAP. Okay. It can no longer get pushed. It needs to be rebranded so we can get it done. And I don't think you should. I think you should do kind of what the Republicans do. They're much better at policy and politics, of passing policy, because what they do is they get into power and they don't talk about what they're going to do. They kind of wink, wink. Everybody knows what's up, and then they pass it. They didn't really run on anti-abortion. No one talked about it, but it was, by the way, we're going to get it done. That's what we need to do. We need to get in power. We need to stop having certain sections kind of use up policies that can get us into trouble. We get into power, and then we do what we want to do. We start. Do you think
that we're going to get into a debate that's going to shoot ourselves in the foot then?
Yeah, why do it? And you don't have to say this is the Green New Deal. You just go, hey, we just passed a bill that you do it. You piecemeal it by pieces by pieces. You go, hey, this year we're going to put 45,000 chargers on the road. Boom, done. No one even needs to know it's the Green New Deal. It doesn't need to, hey, we're going to make batteries. Boom, done. Part of the Green New Deal. It can be done without putting it on such political terms where you get automatically negative right off the bat. And then when people see it, they're going to be like, oh my God, my son can make a legitimate money on repairing these things and doing this. How awesome is that? That's what we need to do. We need to stop making everything a political thing and get work done.
Zach.
So I don't know if I'm pushing back on this, but for clarification, the Green New Deal isn't like a bill or a law. It's literally a resolution saying, hey, let's do a bunch of stuff. And it does give outlines for what we should do, but it's not saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z, spend this much money. It's just saying, go this direction. And so, honestly, if the name is the problem, I'm with the Sunrise Movement. I am actively forcing the Green New Deal. But if the name is really that big of a problem, I don't care. I just want the policy passed.
So then how can we work together, Zach, on that? And because you and I both know that the media is going to love to listen to lefties bitch and moan and separate over this issue if they can. If there's any stalling of the Green New Deal, or if, you don't support it. So how do progressives and centrists in the left work together and not fall into that trap?
Well, I think it's already kind of happening under the Biden administration, and this will be the point of the night where I actually do praise Joe Biden and his climate task force and his climate plan. It doesn't say Green New Deal, but it has a lot of Green New Deal to it. And he's picking people like Deb Haaland who do support a Green New Deal. So even though it's not being explicitly said, there's really good things that are happening right now. And I think the best part of Biden's administration will be his plan for the environment.
I think also when we talk about branding, what we have to do, we're talking about becoming greener. Okay, the reason we want to become greener is because we feel pretty confident, extremely confident, that the climate's changing in a bad way, and we're going to soon be in very big trouble. So one thing we need to be smart about is also our reverse branding, and that is, to your point, Ace. There's a bill created that is a renewable energy stimulus package, and it has requirements that city power grids have to become 30% renewable within 10 years or whatever. And it gets to the floor, and what happens? Some Republican senator pops up and goes, "This is that Green New Deal bullshit we've been warning you about. Listen to that shit." And some Democrat needs to stand up immediately and say, "Are you a climate change denier? Are you a flat earther also? Are you a COVID denier? You're going to stand here in 2021 and tell us that the earth does not need to be more green. You have a view of the future that's Terminator, smog blocking out the sun, robots roaming the earth. I mean, is that the way come on. Like, we have to start making it comical that you would be anti-Green New Deal. So we need to start.
That's a culture change, Jeff.
We need to start calling it the smog old deal. So you want the smog old deal. You don't want the Green New Deal. You want the smog old deal. You want the climate change. And by the way, they're so anti-immigration. Guess what happens when our climate keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter?
Yeah, more people come.
Everyone south of us comes to Texas. Exactly. Every fucking human from us to the equator comes north. And where are you going to put all those people, you xenophobic assholes? So we have to start telling these guys, look, you got to wrap your head around the concepts that's going on here. If you want to be a climate change denier, to Zach's point, even the right needs to phase those guys out. You're a dinosaur. It's time for you to go away. And like I've said 1,000 times, moving towards renewable energy should long-term be economical, regardless of whether or not it reduces smog. It should be economical to start moving towards renewable energy. I mean, maybe I don't understand the way these power systems work, but I don't think they have the service and replacement costs plus the constant fueling costs. I mean, when you have to constantly throw coal into a power plant, I mean, when you see coal trains go across the Kansas and they're 5 miles long and full of coal, that costs something. And I don't think it's cheap. So we need to start selling things too. It's just, look, it's a good idea and it's green. And if you don't like being green and economical, then what are you? You're a spend more money pro-smogger. So sometimes I worry, Ace, you're very bright. I agree with a lot of things you say, but we can definitely, as the left, push for gay rights, being greener, being less assholes as men, and not necessarily always have to worry about our oppositional branding. Like, those guys are going to hate us no matter what we do. We could give them everything they want, and they're still going to call us absolutely sandbagging assholes. So at some point, if it's the Green New Deal or if it's just a green agenda or whatever, at some point maybe the branding doesn't matter. We need to just sort of stop. And when someone says that sounds like Green New Deal, what are you, a climate change denier? Are you a flat earther too? We just need to make it so lame to be a climate change denier. And I think we're moving that way because all of our kids are learning about environmental science. We're all seeing it. I mean, Wichita, Kansas used to be the ice capital of the world. We get ice storms all the time because the ground gets cold and it would rain and it would freeze. Wichita hasn't had an ice storm in a decade. Now, why? My personal opinion is the ice band has moved further north because it doesn't stay cold enough long enough for the ground to get cold and get ice storms. So we all can witness how the climates are changing all across the country. So unfortunately, it's been a slow road. But at some point, these people that want to throw stones at the Green New Deal, I think we just have to ask them, what's your plan? Run petroleum until we run out?
And this is where you get Biden. Biden can actually make this thing done because the way you get the Green New Deal done is you don't talk about it. You start actually doing action. You go to Mitch McConnell and you go, hey, you guys want to build some stuff in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell? You want to build those? You want to build those chargers? You want to plant? Boom, plant. And you get some of these Republican states. You get Detroit to start building chargers, batteries. You get these things, and these Republicans now see money and power. Now we're good to go. Stay away from making a whole socialist Green New Deal, which has already got kind of a negative thing, and start doing action. Give some of these states the ability to make this stuff, and you'll get the stuff done. This is how it's always been done. And the thing is, I don't have, like I said, I love progressive policy. I like it. I just want to make sure that when we have the power with Joe Biden, I need everybody to get on this train and start pushing. Don't pull too much back because we need to get policies done. We can't be if Joe Biden is working on Obamacare 2.0, don't start yelling and screaming Medicare for all. It won't get touched. You're just pulling it back. He won't do it. Be happy that it's a train going forward towards a policy that you like.
Redemption is saying something that's critical, and I know because we're trying to have a conversation and we're caught in the day we're in, he's right, that we are giving oxygen to their branding. And so this is also something, and that this is why earlier I pushed back on whatever bias folks are having, because we're going to have to find ways to do this without falling into their branding when we're having our own discussions about it, and it's hard.
You bring up the environment. They're already going to call you a tree-hugging lesbian that drives a Subaru. I mean, they're already going to do that. It doesn't matter. We could call it the Brave New Deal. You know, America.
America saves America. You don't have to do it as any plan. You just
fair enough, Redemption. This isn't just the Green New Deal. It's all of our things.
All of it. Yeah. You could start doing things, and the Republican states will go with it because they're going to get something out of it. That's how deals always get done. They always get done that way. Obamacare got passed because there was a whole bunch of Republican states that would get a whole bunch of citizens onto Obamacare, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And the good news is we do have some Republicans that are on our side that, as much as I hate to say it, we really need to have these, the Susan Collinses, the Susan Collins, the Morosky's, Mitt Romney. We need these 3 votes. These are our 3 votes. If we lose the Senate, those 3 votes will overcome the Senate loss. We need them to get anything passed. And I know as soon as I say it, everybody goes, "Oh, fuck." But it's the only way you're going to get things done. And if you can't get things done, then in 4 years, you're going to have Donald Trump again. And by the way, you have 4 years to fix everything that Donald Trump broke. Everything. And if you don't get it done, he will be back, or his son, or his daughter, or a Trumpster that's just like him, where Trump has opened up the map and said, here's everywhere where there's a hole. If we don't get things done, we are in trouble.
Zach,
we need everybody pushing.
I agree, Ace. No disagreement on this. I'm moving it on. Zach?
So I guess a few points. One point, if we're talking about, I guess, the whole democratic ecosystem, right? You do need progressives who are pushing as far as they can, because it does move the party, even if it's only in increments. The fact that progressives are saying, hey, I want to do this most far out Bernie thing, that means the new common sense is, well, let's meet him halfway. If we start at halfway, then we're halfway from that. And so the idea that I'm trying to put forth is you want to negotiate from the farthest part out and then work your way towards the middle. So
except that's not quite, and I'm not trying to be, it's not.
Well, I'm gonna cut you off, Ace, and say that is what happened in the Obama years, because Obama was dancing with centrists and Republicans and trying to charm his way through their cabal, which was never going to work with him. And part of the reason that we're engaging the Bernie Sanders name even now is because during those 8 years, Bernie was on TV. He was out there. Was there any other progressives or centrist senators who were coming out on a weekly basis throwing out new policy ideas? Hell no. They were running for cover under the wing of the Democrats. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why Democrats are terrible at governing in general is because it's meritocracy and everyone has to stand in line and everyone has to get approval like it's a faculty luncheon at a university. And no one has any courage to come up from nowhere. And so part of the reason why there is no thought, technically no independent thought inside of the Democratic Party, especially when they're in power, look at Hillary Clinton. You know, it was her turn and there was nobody else that could have their turn. And we didn't even have a real field of candidates that year because no one dared take what was hers. Well, guess what? America doesn't work that way. And so AOC coming in just a couple of years later was the hottest thing in town because she was like, screw you, Democrat establishment. And everybody was like, oh my God, somebody had the courage to say it. we have to listen to the left. They don't have to all be Bernie. In fact, we probably need to start shedding some of those leaders and allowing some of the newer leaders to come up with a voice. But AOC is filling a void. It's a vacuum. There's just nobody else doing it.
Yeah, but then you get AOC attacking her own party and saying there needs to be a whole bunch of change.
But we will attack her the same way, going, "You're not falling in line with Joe."
It's not it, but it has to be a polite. It has to be kind of in the middle. You have to know your boundaries. I got to push back. Zach says that I'm all about moving, and maybe you don't really listen to me, but you move towards. But you've also said a couple of times where you want to have a hit list. If you don't go for me, you go. That's an AOC thing as well. She's all about either go with me or you're out. I need you out. I need Nancy Pelosi to go. I need everybody to go.
Exactly.
Hey, so the point I was making is that, yeah, I do want a hit list and I want to go. I'm not saying I'm the one who's going to be necessarily the compromiser. I'm saying that the new common sense might be, like you even pointed out on your graph, I don't want to be Bernie. I want to be in this middle area. And that is farther to the left than what the center of that graph was. So even though I do want all the policies that I'm saying, I can also step back and realize, hey, even if I don't get what I want, I'm still going to keep pushing for what I want. But even if I don't get it, me pushing so far left makes people think, oh, well, maybe this common sense is somewhere in between the left and where we are now.
And Zach is also saying, if we have politicians that aren't performing, we want to primary them. He didn't say, if we don't get the candidates we want, we're not going to vote, or we're going to vote Republican. So, primarying people, submitting more progressive candidates in a primary system is the American way. And if our party does need to continue to trend towards the left, as Zach feels, which I respect his opinion, then that's how it would happen, is as people come up, as the people in the center of your chart, Ace, come up for re-election, they would be replaced by people further to the left, drawing the party further left.
And the party, if you pull up my map, the party is actually, the ones that are in power are actually pretty left. Let me show you these people. So Elizabeth Warren is right here. Joe Biden's not on here, but he would be right here. Look at where all the people that are in power that you've heard of. These are all, look at all these people. This person is not here, right? Susan Collins, by the way, we have some people that are in more Republican, right? But these people that are in charge, they're here. They're more left. What I don't want to get pulled is all the way over here and get all the information lost, because we're talking about down here where we should be just talking about here and coming together right here.
Will be very interesting on this chart, and I don't know how you could possibly add a third dimension to this chart, but what I'd be very interested to see, and maybe it's more simply done instead of the leadership score, maybe it would be ideology versus election margin, because it strikes me that a lot of times when you deal with the senators, you have these crazy right-wing, McConnell, for example, Mitch McConnell, who obviously is like this diehard Republican, doesn't act like he even understands what Democrats are. Well, he obviously is in a district where he feels he's never going to be, replaced by a Democrat. So he has the ability to sit way off on the right side of the scale.
McConnell right there.
Because he's confident. Well, I guess he's in the middle then, more middle right. My point is, one of the things that affords Bernie to be so far left is he's from a state like Vermont. If he was elected from Texas by some miracle, he obviously couldn't be as far left because he's far left. So that's the other thing that happens, is because people have to get reelected, they may get pulled more centrist in the bigger scheme, the entire pantheon of positions. They may have to be more centrist because they're running in a place that if they were more left, they wouldn't be popular. So there's all kinds of other forces impacting here. So, for example, you might, field a more progressive candidate in a more contested race, and while they win the primary, they get just blown out in the popular election.
Well, that's what they did right here, right?
And that's the big risk too.
Worry about.
Yeah, you run somebody.
People are already in the Republican zone, so they're going to push these, and they're going to try to grab these and make them Republicans.
You get 51.
What we did right here, we try to steal this seat and make it a Democratic seat versus a Republican seat.
51% of the Democrats gets you the primary, but if you only get 30% of the election body, you're not going to win. So that's a real challenging concept. And I think that's I'd be interested to see. I would not be surprised if as you go towards the center, you tend to get to closer and closer election wins for both parties. Because I think that's what I've seen for years, right? Bob Dole was one of the most outspoken Republicans for a long time. Guess what state? Kansas. It's been red for a very long time. So he was not concerned about getting reelected because he was too Republican.
Yeah. So the content, I did look this up. I don't have the ones that get the most like close races. They're going to be right here.
Yeah.
The ones that don't, they're going to be right here.
Right.
And
because they can stretch their legs. They can be more.
Every once in a while, someone like Cruz, although it wasn't as close, they might get questioned because they're going way too over here. But generally, these are the easy ones. These are the contentious ones.
Yeah, that's what you would assume.
They're all over the place.
That makes sense.
Because they have to. In order for this person, in order for him to get elected, he has to have Republican policies. That's how he gets elected. Same thing with Susan Collins. She has to be a little bit more Democratic, a little bit more towards the Democrats than the Republicans, or she would lose.
Okay, so Trump has come in and the pendulum swings, and Trump has had his 4 years of America First, of immigration, of his executive orders, and the pendulum now is swinging back. It's just swung back towards at least the center, but it's going more left. Obviously, we're moving left. Let's make the argument, and I'm hopeful that we get amazing news out of Georgia on the 5th of January, and we are going to have a blue Senate. In that moment, some things are going to happen in this debate we've been having all night long. There's going to be some sussing out quickly as to what the hell happens now, because the next morning it's hit the gas. It's hit the gas in what direction? And so to close out tonight, or begin to close out tonight, if we win those seats and it's time to rock and roll, and we'll start with you, Zach. Give me your top three in order, if you will, if you can, putting you on the spot. That you would top three racetracks that you would want to go down, and whether we get through them or not, but what you would want to see, and we'll go around and see what would be your top three in order. What would be your first moves on the chessboard of the future if we win and can go forward?
The first thing would be DC statehood. That moves the ball forward for any other issue. It would get us more Democrats on the board. The second issue would be whatever Biden needs to do to pass large environmental reform, make it happen. And I believe Biden will do it. And the third thing would, in my opinion, most important, I guess one of the more important things is, one, reestablishing all of our foreign deals / getting out of the Middle East.
Ace, you're up.
God, I like that DC statehood, but add Puerto Rico in there. Let's stack the board a little bit. We got to start cheating as well, by the way.
Is that number one for you?
That's no, I can't say. Yes, if we could do that, go for it. DC, Puerto Rico, bring them in.
That ensures a lot of future elections.
Yeah, that basically gives you 4 senators, extra votes. You're good. So pack the board that way. Yeah, I love it. I would do a huge stimulus package. And that stimulus package would have to be money, actual money, where you're going to get everybody nice and happy. And
do you do a UBI?
Huh?
Do you do a UBI, Universal Basic Income?
No, I don't know if you can get that even in the Democratic Party passed. But I'm talking about like an actual check that says, listen, we know a lot of people have lost a lot of money. There are certain people in this economy that will never regain what they've lost ever. They lowered their bracket, and it's always going to be that way. And maybe we need to give back a little bit of money, between $2,000 to $4,000, just pump that economy up. And part of that also, out of that stimulus package, I would also do some sort of education. Of course, wipe out some debt. That would also stimulate the economy quite a bit. I don't know how much. That's an argument for another day. Definitely wipe out some debt get that economy moving. And then the third thing is transportation, which is basically, I want to call it transportation. You can call it Green New Deal, but I'm going to be like I said, it's all about a wink, wink plan.
It's marketing.
Transportation, which is just the Green New Deal. We're going to do a ton of stuff in transportation, charging stations, batteries, all that stuff that's going to take us into the Green New Deal, get cars to drive longer with more and more and more. And by the end, we'll get the same result without ever having to say the word. Healthcare too, of course.
Of course.
I only asked for 3, but
I know. That's why it's tough.
I like the 4 centers. I couldn't give that up. That's an excellent.
It's a big deal,
centers, please.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. I'll go with. I actually didn't hear most of Zach's answer because I was grabbing this list off the board. We made a list the other night, one of my scopes, and DC and Puerto Rico statehood is number 1 on my list because not only do you win future elections, but theoretically you'd be adding senators and House members. So that would be a way to get 4 new senators from, I believe, blue areas. I believe they're both extreme. Well, DC is almost 100% blue. DC is like 97% blue. Puerto Rico, I can't guarantee. I presume it's at least 50-50. So 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Number 2, I would say kids in cages, which, I mean, you could slash to DACA / immigration, but we have to absolutely stop kids in cages. And then 3rd would be campaign finance reform. There's too much gray money. Everyone that gives $1 to a candidate should be documented and listed by name. And it should be impossible for people to form an LLC and give huge sums of money to a candidate. Form a corporation only to give money to a candidate through a PAC, through secrecy. That's just got to stop. We have secrecy of the ballot. There shouldn't be secrecy of the buck, because that just creates all kinds of terrible crap. And honestly, it leads to concepts like deep state. I mean, you want to talk about deep state, being able to fund a candidate secretly is not what we want.
Yeah, that's scary.
So one of the things I agree with all of you. There's 2 things that I want to lift up that are primary for me in a Biden administration. They're not necessarily laws, but the first one is and you've heard me, if you've heard any of these scopes go off on this, to rebuild the executive branch and maybe rebuild it back better than it was. But the reason Tom's Vilsack, and I know I'm going to piss people off by saying it was a good choice, was because the agriculture department, it doesn't exist. It's been gutted to the point where it doesn't even reside in the same building it used to. And so to start out with some of these people, to me, seems like a very pragmatic approach to say, hey, let's put the guy who at least remembered what the undersecretaries did and go back and get some of the people who were 40-year researchers in agriculture and in food science and various places that were called deep staters and were fired and lost their job. And a lot of them lost their retirement, had to choose between keeping their job and giving up a lifetime worth of research. So that happened under Trump's watch. And I think that that's going to be absolutely critical, is to reestablishing solid governance. And sure, there needed to be waste and abuse that was cut out. Well, it's been cut out. And so now we need to rebuild, and we need to rebuild in a smart way that has an executive branch that does help this economy grow, because that's what those secretaries are there for. Another one I want to lift up is a secretary of technology, and we might need 3 or 4 of those, maybe a sec of technology defense and technology entrepreneurialism that deals with all kinds of issues. But we don't have a department that's focusing on those things yet with the power of a secretary of that. And we need that. So those are some of the things I would add on. And I think Joe could do those. I think a new secretary or 2 would be scandalous for people who say the government's too big. But, it's time to raise taxes on the rich, and it's time to pay for some shit that we got to do, because we've tried the Republican never pay your taxes if you're rich, bleed the government dry. And we've seen what happens. Every time they get in power, they leave the place without any money. And it's just been a run on the legalities of the whole thing. It's just, if you want to talk about a deep state, you can pretty much take anyone in the Republican Party and not only question their patriotism these days, whether they stick with the Constitution or whether they stick with their candidate, but for some reason they've fallen prey to supporting dodgy politicians without any question. This is a party that believes that government is a bad thing overall, which seems to be very unpatriotic. And so, that's why we're having this conversation tonight. As we close up, I'd just like to say, are there any other comments before we wrap up? This has been healthy. It's been hard. I'd like to thank you guys for hanging in there. I'd like to thank everybody who's been in the comments for really smart conversation tonight. This isn't the last time we're going to do this, but like I say, I want to be careful doing too much of this while we're still worrying about the
Georgia thing. We gotta absolutely. And we're only here to just make sure we all want to do what's best. And everybody has their own, but we need to all come together and move away from politics and get to actual work. I think when we pass something, when Joe Biden passes something, we all need to go, that's awesome. We love that. Keep on doing. How awesome is that? We need to pump up these plans. One thing that Republicans do all the time is anytime they do anything, they talk about it for years.
Yeah. They spike the football.
They spike the football and it gains popularity. The tax cut that was given to the wealthy is still very popular because that's all Republicans talk about is the tax cut, the tax cut.
We need to all write down. For example, when Biden places the first judge. So whenever someone says, you Joe Biden, he's worthless. What do you like about Joe Biden? We can be like, well, he's put in liberal judges.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they all
if he passes any kind of health care bill or anything, how awesome is that America First bill? That's a great bill.
Yep. Hey guys, just so you know, we are now currently live on Twitter Live. I have made the move over there. It's under Marty Blue 001. And if you guys would mind subscribing over to the YouTube channel, we're getting that going too. So
I did that too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was something I had to get going. I hadn't have it set up. Periscope going away is so easy. I mean, Periscope's always made it so easy to kick off, and then now it's going to change. But I think we'll figure it out. I think there will be other ways.
I think we'll figure it out. It's all about. And I'm glad you're simulcasting several places because that way you can probably review your own stats and we can kind of feel as the move changes.
Yep. Zach, I would like to just a special thanks for you, man.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate you being here, dude.
I was your age. I probably didn't know one fucking thing.
Yeah, impressive.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, I deeply respect all of you, and especially Ace, even though we definitely disagree on things. I think it's important to have these conversations because we are better than Republicans who don't know facts, right?
Yep.
So even though we disagree, we're disagreeing on where to go with actual facts.
Yep.
And we're not disagreeing on the facts themselves.
I think
we've got to go ahead, Jeff.
Zero oppositional research. Like you ask them, what do you think about Trump's taxes? And they don't know. So what's good about these debates inside our square is we're doing our own opposition research. We're talking about the fact, what does AOC's branding do to us? What do we need to do? Now, I would argue at the end of the day, we need to do what I was saying, which is call them climate change deniers. But it's worth discussing what our weaknesses are, what our faults are, because otherwise we're just blind, bigoted, just like everybody else. If you don't stop and look at what you believe and why you believe it, and if the people we're talking about meet those beliefs, then you're just bigoted. Well, our guy's better than your guy, so F you, and our guy's great. And that's
the thing about this thing. We're leaving this hang up there. And so for anybody who is watching this, whether it's live now or later on, please forward this to your friends who, there's so much stuff out there that's just the antagonistic fighting between the right and the left. And while that's very sexy to watch and you can kill 3 hours having some fun with it, quite honestly, it gets old. And this is the kind of stuff that we're trying to do so that we're not perfect at all, but we're trying to model a healthy conversation of some things that are actually happening in the left and the center that we're not ashamed of, and we're leaving it up there. So, refer to it, send a link, whatever.
And we didn't call anybody names. We didn't say people should be locked up. We didn't call anybody that they're scum of the earth. We didn't do any of that.
Yep.
That's the big thing is we need to get away from making everybody the worst human being. When you make them the scum of the earth, then why would you even want to deal with them? We're removing that. We just are talking on ideas. We have differences of opinion, but we want to all move forward.
Well, this is what winning looks like.
It is. This is really.
This is what winning looks like, because we're not doing a post-mortem because we lost. Oh my God, we need to go find what issues are important. We know what issues are important. Literally, you guys had a blistering, awesome discussion about where the Medicare for all or healthcare as a priority lands. Nobody's questioning that. We're just questioning how, and it's coming. And so for those Trump supporters out there who are still, hoping for some sort of an overthrow of America and to support their traitorous candidate, God bless you. Have a great Christmas, but I think you're going to be disappointed. And America's moving on in some healthy and awesome ways. So, Jeff, man, I don't know how you kept track of that tonight. What do you got to say about the contestants in the debate?
I had several things. First of all, I feel Ace won the background category with his Seinfeld theme background. Zach won on sound, though. Zach's sound quality has been epic tonight.
Good.
I believe his mic setup, probably due to his age and probably expertise in gaming, he has his setup really well honed. I deducted a point from Zach for his 101% Fox poll. But I did appreciate that his 72% proven once and twice that 72% of people are pro-government healthcare, whatever that means exactly. And I don't think we really debated that. I also thought Ace's point that Medicare for all, at very least, drives us towards, if not actually creating a socialist country, was a very interesting point that I hadn't really, I thought about the public school model, but I hadn't really taken that second level of, the federal government would be controlling 45% of our employment,
of our paycheck.
And I would say, you go on Wikipedia for any city, top employers. I could be wrong. I mean, someone can prove me wrong, but even in Silicon Valley, even in Detroit, number one's going to be healthcare, because it doesn't matter if you work on cars or you're a trash man or whatever. For every few people that do those jobs, there's a medical person. Yep. And so that is a big deal. Taking that sector is going to be a lot of people. So I think, I scored it, pretty straight down the middle. I think they both had really good points and really good quality. And again, we had a discussion without anyone being called a cuck, which is, that's extra points.
That's a win.
Extra points.
Yeah, that's a win, right?
That's all we have. All we have to do is not call.
No one's getting locked up in a cage. No one's getting told to go back to your country.
No one
I love that. We welcome everybody.
No one's life is being threatened.
No one's claiming a clicked result.
I won't ever talk about Trump ever again.
I think Bernie Bro was the nastiest thing said. I think Bernie Bro was the worst thing said. And
I wasn't really offended.
Right. And we sussed that out too. So, all right. So good work, everybody. And panel, hang on after we're done. We'll debrief for a quick second and plan on some next times. Next Thursday, this has been a Thursday, Sunday effort. Next Thursday night upcoming is Christmas Eve. And as a pastor, I'm working that night. So we won't be doing this on Thursday night, but I would love to come back on Sunday and see you guys in a week. 10 p.m. Eastern time, we'll kick off again. Again, to the panel, to the folks, rock on. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next time. America Heals. Awesome, guys. Thank you. Catch you later.